We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And after I was saying last week, I think we did an update about the wildfires here in BC, how the Lower Mainland had somehow not been too badly affected. Well,
you cursed it.
That about changed. Yes, indeed. The smell of actually quite pleasant smell as far as the actual odor of it goes, because it smells like a campfire is very...
That gets old real fast as somebody who's gone camping with his family.
That's
far
right.
too much.
It's very pungent in the air right now, very noticeable. So if I do any coughing, if you see some teary eyes, because it's a little irritating on the eyes, I gotta say. It's in the air right now, so that has reached us. It's not like the worst that it could be. Yay, famous last words. I just made it terrible for next week.
What do you keep doing? Have you not learned your lesson?
I do not learn my lesson, no. But that is going on.
Now, we are... we're starting the podcast a little late, not that that matters to any of you, and I was doing that because I went to physical therapy this morning, which doesn't matter to any of you. But as 10 minutes before I was supposed to leave, the skies opened up.
Okay.
And it was just sheets, like insane sheets of rain here. And I go to my Google app, my weather app, and it's like 10% chance of rain, 0.01 inches predicted. Current conditions, overcast. I'm like, how can you be so wrong? So
I mean, maybe it was highly localized.
It was not, because I drove. I still had to leave, and it was everywhere. Everybody was pissing everywhere.
All right.
So my entire zip code, for the very least, which is how the Google app does that, was definitely getting wet.
Okey-doke.
So, it has been thundering and whatever. The dog's over there. She's been following me around because she gets real freaked out by loud noises.
Yeah.
Which is weird because I'm loud. You would think that she would not want to be near me.
Not that kind of loud.
Anyway, she doesn't want to be next to anybody else, and she keeps following me. So she is definitely going to be in here.
All right.
If it gets loud, you'll know because she'll start pacing. Be trying
Hello
to get into
to
my
Violet.
lap.
I don't think she'll be on camera, but she's in the background there somewhere.
She is over there sleeping through the trauma. So... All right, Rob, what did you watch this week?
Yeah, I watched a couple of movies. I did not make it out to the theater to see Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, which I had sort of intended to, but I'm going to try and take it in.
Isn't that a video game, Dead Reckoning, right? Isn't that there's like a zombie game called Dead Reckoning, isn't there?
Probably.
I feel like there is.
Why not at this point? I don't know. But I do intend to take it in IMAX prior to Oppenheimer opening this Thursday. So I'm going to have to do that quickly because we're here already on the Tuesday and Oppenheimer's coming in on Thursday evening. But I did watch two movies at home. I watched Cocaine Bear because that showed up on Amazon Prime Video faster than I expected it to, but there it was, free with Prime. I was kind of disappointed with Cocaine Bear. It wasn't nearly as madcap insane as the previews had sort of made it out to be. So I wanted to comment on this because it is like R-rated. It is quite gory. The language in it is, it's not over the top. There's some language in it that, because it's already an R rating. But I was like, it just didn't work properly for me. I think they missed the tone a bit, because this is going for comedy. I can't even really call it horror, but it's like, comedy gore. But the thing with comedy gore is like, okay, when you've got the monster, which in this case is a bear on cocaine,
yes.
It's like when you're doing the over-the-top kills, it's like...
Yes.
You kind of want to be cheering for the monster in the comedy gore category, or at the very least, you kind of be wanting to go
Usually there's like one or two good characters and everybody else has it coming.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. This didn't really do that. These characters didn't really have it coming, and you kind of felt bad. At least I felt bad. I was like, this is just kind of mean-spirited. Like some of the deaths were like really gruesome. which it's like, okay, if you do that right, then you're kind of like, you might be going, ooh, but you're kind of like having fun as you go, that's the idea.
Yeah, like Dale and Tucker versus Evil.
Sure.
Kids, most of the kids.
Or like the Shaun of the Dead movies or something, which, like they got it right. This one, I was just like, oh, that's just really awful. Like, that guy didn't deserve that. That woman didn't deserve that. That was horrible. And
so they can either be evil or stupid.
Right? Exactly.
But they can't be empathetic, because if they're empathetic, then you feel bad for them. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So, it wasn't fun to watch it, which is what they were clearly going for. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe the movie makers are just like, well, we just hate all humans. It doesn't matter who they are or what they do.
So, after 2 years of COVID, or 2+ years of COVID, I can understand that sentiment. Go on.
But yeah, that's so. Yeah, I was disappointed in that. And then they're like, the CGI on the bear, they tried to like anthropomorphize it quite a bit, at least in its facial expressions, and give it way more expression than a bear really has. So that kind of takes you out of it a bit, because the CG wasn't great, because it didn't have a very high budget in this. So I mean, it was relatively impressive CGI on the
like
bear.
Elizabeth Banks or something like that was director of this thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I was kind of disappointed. It wasn't nearly as fun as I wanted it to be.
Positive reviews of this movie, so okay. I'm it's interesting to me that I would like to see it.
Sure.
Some day.
And so that's what I'll say about that one. The other movie I watched was Venom, Let There Be Carnage, which was almost the opposite. I was expecting this to be really bad, and it wasn't. It was basically about the same as the first Venom. So if you enjoyed the first Venom,
okay.
yeah. I mean, certainly not the greatest movie ever, but I mean, I'm like,
some good scenes surrounded by a whole bunch of stuff I don't care about.
Yeah, I was like, that was entertaining. I enjoyed the performances. I think they did the character of Carnage a little dirty, and that it was like very minimal. And
especially since it gets this name on the freaking placard.
Everything went. I mean, it was only a 90-minute movie, so everything went very quickly and wrapped up very easily, and was almost a bit of a CW level type of like, you know how the big bads go out on the CW shows, and it's kind of like, oh, that's it. That was it. You didn't have
Did you guys run out of budget? Is that why we can't see him anymore?
Didn't have a grander finale than that, and the stakes they only ever went that high? Okay, well, all right, it's a small movie. That's what you did. But
stakes don't have to be high for us, but stakes have to be high for the characters.
That's right.
If nobody really cares that much if this thing gets done or doesn't get done, you're like, it's a lot of effort.
Sure.
But not a lot of payoff.
But with Venom Let There Be Carnage from the previews, right, from the trailers, I thought, oh, are they really going like off the ledge with this one? It seemed like maybe they were just going like completely out to left field with it, which wouldn't necessarily have been bad, but I was a little trepidatious about that. But no, I watched it, I was like, oh, if anything, they dialed back Eddie Brock in this one compared to the way he was in the first Venom. So it was about the same tone overall and about the same scope. So I didn't mind that movie one little bit. I thought it was all right.
And I've never been super excited about that movie, simply because, and this is my own personal bias and probably, how I was when I read the original comics and how I remember it years and years later. But I did read the original when Venom was big. Yeah, Venom came out. It was huge, and even though I'm not a Spider-Man collector, either I did collect some of the comics just because of the whole Venom thing, and Todd McFarlane was drawing him back then. May have been writing him too, I think. But he or my brother was collecting him. I was reading his. Either way, it was really cool. And then Venom was pretty cool. I liked that whole thing. And then Carnage showed up, and I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
this is not great. And then Todd McFarlane stopped drawing Venom, and nobody else can draw him, apparently, because he just looks ridiculous. Like, he was so awesome when Todd McFarlane drew him, and everybody else, I'm like, what is wrong with his mouth? Like, it is way too big, and that's all they can do. They're like, it's Spider-Man with a big mouth. I'm like, nope. So I kind of lost interest in all of that, and I've never been a huge Spider-Man fan anyways. From the comic books, the movie is fine, whatever. But I didn't watch anything, so that's it.
Okay, that's fine, because we got oodles to get to this week. So yeah,
I'm just watching the highlights from the Tour de France.
Okay,
and every episode I'm going, ooh. Or every episode, every day that I see one, I'm like, "Ooh, this is going to make a good episode on the Netflix
right there you go
series." Well, I can't wait for next year when I get the whole backstory. I will say, that I am getting. At the beginning, I was kind of like, okay, well, the fans are excited and they're all sort of, there, but they get out of the way and it looks worse than it is because the perspective of the cameras and stuff like that. It's getting ridiculous.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
people are getting real close to the track, are they?
Well, they've already knocked over a couple of people in this one Tour de France alone. One guy lost control of his stupid flag thing that he was holding. It wrapped around a cyclist's handlebars and pulled him down like he was fishing for him.
Oh, man.
And just the other day, somebody was taking a selfie, hit this guy's arm, took out like 5 people. Some of them can't continue with the tour anymore. They're too injured to continue with the tour. I'm like, you guys got to do something about these fans.
No kidding.
I mean,
that ain't right.
If the fans can't control themselves, then you got to do something about the fans.
Which is a shame because it is only a couple of idiots, but they ruin it for everybody just like everything. So
just like everything else. You know why people are like, I don't understand why we have to have all these warning labels on everything in the United States. This is why.
Apparently.
Because somebody actually did try to drink the rat poison. That's why you have to say, don't drink
Indeed.
rat poison on the bottle because someone did. This is AVRant, the podcast that rants about a lot of things, including rat poison, apparently, and also answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Come to our website to find our episodes, our show notes, and our Flickr album so you can follow along with the pictures that we're talking about. You can also find us on facebook.com/AVRant podcast, youtube.com/AVRant. You can contact us directly, rob@avrant.com. His threads.
Yep.
Is at First Reflect. Is that how we're saying that?
I don't know what you say for over there, but yes.
I don't know what we're saying.
I'm First Reflect everywhere. You search for me. If I'm on the service, I'll be First Reflect. That's how it works.
And I'm Tom@avrant.com, and I'm not anywhere else. So.
Yep. Threads desperately needs that chronological follower-only feed. That it's. I mean, I'm willing to give them time to make it because it's honestly it wasn't even supposed to be out yet. But they desperately need that because the whole just getting a bunch of things that I'm not following and then losing my place in the list of everything that came in constantly. I'm like, yeah, that's getting real old real fast. So they got to work on that, but they will.
All right. Let's thank our listeners of the week. Become a listener of the week. You have to support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and sending us a PayPal donation.
Yeah.
This week, we want to thank Ari and Brandon for doing that. Thank you very much to Ari and Brandon.
Yeah, thank you, Ari. Thank you, Brandon. Very nice of you to support us financially through PayPal. Thank you.
I think we got one more that came in, but they'll be mentioned next week. So if you don't hear your name and it was you, it's coming.
Yeah, we cut things off on the Sunday night. That's how it works.
And if it came on Sunday night, then or Sunday afternoon, I still cut you off. Whatever I wrote that down was when it happened.
That's right.
We also want to thank our 133 patrons over at patreon.com. It's a service where you can sign up to become a monthly subscriber or contributor to our podcast. Every month they take some money from you and give most of it to us. So thank you to our patrons.
Yeah, that is patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So a big thank you to our 133 patrons over there.
So I want to thank Brandon for giving me permission to use his photos on AV Gadgets. So thank you very much, Brandon.
That's right, avgadgets.com, where Tom is editor-in-chief. So he uses photos that are sent in sometimes, but wants that permission so he doesn't get sued off the internet. So thank you, Brandon, for sending in your photos and giving permission.
When you get mad at me for telling you not to buy an amp,
that's right.
And you're like, screw that guy, you can't use my photos anymore. Gotcha. Anyways. We also got notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going through, I guess, the wildfires, and
right
also
now.
there's the strikes going on.
There most certainly are, yes.
A bunch of strikes, which I don't think that we qualify for that. I don't think that podcasters count.
I'm not part of WGA or SAG-AFTRA.
I mean, yeah, but if you cross the picket lines in any way, you're never going to be that. But I think maybe that ship has sailed for both of us.
No, they've said like going on podcasts, like for people who are in the unions going on podcasts is okay. As long as they're not promoting things for the studios.
Well, we're not promoting anything.
No, we're not.
We're actually mostly promoting you not buying stuff, no matter how badly you want to.
So if somehow a WGA or SAG-AFTRA member ever found us, which is a low possibility, but if they ever did, I don't think they'd be mad at us.
Kind of feel like the what's her name who worked on Orange is the New Black would probably count. What was her name?
Yeah,
don't remember.
Abby.
You're so smart. I'm so bad with names. I'm so bad with names. All right. Anyways, we got some notes of gratitude from people. From Ryan. He says having young kids doesn't means he doesn't catch every single episode, but he tries to tune in as often as he can. If I can't put your kid to sleep, I don't know.
Right.
Ari, who says thanks as always for a great show. Jim. Paul, who appreciated our feedback about his acoustic panel placement with his posters above his panels on his back wall. Corner traps will be added sometime from now. Well, that's okay. And he can vouch for Acoustic Panels Canada. Their finished quality has uniformly been very good. Dale, Shawn, Fred, who says thanks for all the effort we put into the podcast year after year. Will, Steve, and Brandon, who enjoys listening to how other AVRant listeners solve the issues that crop up in their home theater. So thank you to all of you for thanking us.
Yeah, for sure. I'll go through the names one more time. Ryan, Ari, Jim, Paul, Dale, Shawn, Fred, Will, Steve, and Brandon. Thank you all very much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. They're very much appreciated. A big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
Let's talk about some news. This comes from our listener, Eric. Even with only 30 or so IMAX theaters in the whole world that are capable of showing Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer in its full 15 perf, I don't know what that is.
15 perforations along the edge of the film. Yes.
Okay. 15 perf 70mm film format, the movie's 3-hour runtime demanded a modification and upgrade to the physical platters that hold the film reels in those theaters.
The platters weren't big enough.
He is so exhausting. I am sorry. I'm sure he's brilliant, and I'm sure that if he called me, I would be like, all that stuff that they say I said about you is lies. I never said that. But anyways, yes, it's exhausting for people to be. I mean, this is along the lines of some of those ridiculous things that you hear people demand in green rooms and stuff like that when they're bands
with the rider.
Yeah, and I know the point of some of that is just to make sure they actually read the rider and did, because if not, then they know that some of the other stuff is not. If they walk into their hotel and there's not a bowl of just green M&Ms, and they know that they didn't read the rider. But this is like, I'm just going to be extra for the sake of being extra. Anyways. Oppenheimer arrives on an IMAX film reel that is 11 miles long and weighs approximately 600 pounds. The original platters could only hold a maximum runtime of 2.5 hours. The extension was added for the 167-minute runtime of Interstellar, and now the entire arm and platter have to be upgraded yet again for Oppenheimer. IMAX has told Nolan that this really is the absolute physical limit, to which he's going to say, hold my beer. I'm gonna make another stupid movie.
Can't you invent a new material?
There is no force on earth that's gonna get me to go to a 3-hour movie at a theater. It's not happening. It's not happening for bathroom reasons alone.
Okay. This is an impressive amount of physical film that they're showing on this enormous disc that has to spin. Because, of course, unlike
look at the thing bend.
Yes. Unlike traditional film movie theaters, you can't, they don't swap reels in IMAX. It's one continuous reel. That thing is flowing through there 11 miles of film as it goes. So it's an impressively large platter, and I'm not sure how they're lifting 600 pounds of it into place, but there you go. They did it.
Over at the TCL Chinese Theater in Los Angeles, they've had to literally construct a new extension to their projection booth specifically to show Oppenheimer. How are you making money back from this?
I don't know.
Like how? How are you doing it? How are you what does he think that is so important? I mean, I saw Tenet. It was fine, right? I'll probably see this someday. Hopefully on a plane where I have 3 hours to kill.
Nice.
But it's there just never. I just don't know how he thinks.
I mean, hey, look at all the free press that they're getting. They don't have to pay for the news coverage, It's the prestige of it.
It's the equivalent of working for exposure.
It's
the equivalent of that. That's what it is. Anyways, Emotiva has released a new BasX A series amplifier model, the 11-channel BasX A11 for $1,300.
Not a bad price for 11 channels of amplification.
It isn't. that nobody usually never needs, but whatever. As part of the BasX A series, the A11 only has RCA inputs, no XLR. But to fit all 11 channels in there, it uses the larger chassis of the XPA series. A single massive toroidal transformer powers a Class H design, delivering 160 watts per channel, 2 channels driven into 8 ohms, or 260 watts into 4 ohms. With all 11 channels driven, it still outputs 105 watts per channel. So this is definitely a much beefier amp than you'll find in any AV receiver, because it is the size of an AV receiver.
And then some.
And only does amplification, so it better be more powerful than what you have in your AV receiver.
No, but still,
great.
$1,300 and like all 11 channels driven, you've got 105 watts per channel into 8 ohms on tap. That's pretty darn impressive.
Okay. As people are out there getting more and more savvy to the fact that they really don't need amplification, they really don't need it.
Sometimes
they want
you do.
it.
Yeah.
They want it. Most people want it, including me. Want it, including you. Want it, but they don't need it. So how do you convince people who realize they don't need something but still want it to buy it? And that is, you keep lowering the price until you hit the price point where they're like, that's the impulse buy. Is $1,300 an impulse buy? It's not. Until you've spent the last 5 to 7 years looking at $2,000 to $3,000 to $4,000 to $5,000 amplification solutions, and then you look at $1,300, you're like, that's a freaking deal.
Well, and that's just it. Like, to put this in context, Monoprice's Monolith 11X. Now that's different because in that one there's a mix of 3 out of the 11 amplifier channels in the Monolith 11X are 200 watts per channel into 8 ohms, and that's all channels driven. So it's about twice the power, about 3 decibels louder for the 3 channels, which you would assume are going to your front, left, right, and center. But then the other 8 are 100 watts per channel. So the other 8 are pretty similar, right? 105 watts per channel versus 100 watts per channel. But in the 11X, you got those 3 channels that are 200 watts per channel. But that is a $2,500 11 channel. So, I mean, this is, a little more than half the price, or a little more than half the price. Granted, you don't have the 3 channels that are 200 watts instead of 100 watts, but most of the time you aren't driving all 11 channels equally. That's pretty darn rare. And this can go up to 160 watts per channel for, 2 channels driven simultaneously. So it's not miles away, and it's, just a little over half the price. So I think there's value here. There are certainly people with rooms where, like, if you do look at all channels driven for one of the AV receivers that has 11 amplifiers built in, if that were an all channels driven rating, it'd be like 45 watts, 45 watts. So this is genuinely going to be like 3 decibels louder than that. And there are people with rooms or just speakers that aren't quite efficient enough for the distance that they're sitting. So I can definitely see a case where this holds value because the price is not crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's not crazy, but it's still a lot of money.
Sure.
Microsoft has announced that the Xbox Live Gold is coming to an end on September 14th. In its place will now be Xbox Game Pass Core.
That's right.
The fact that it says Game Pass Core means that there's other levels. So
yes.
Still priced at $10 a month or a discounted annual subscription for $60 a year. If you want to continue playing online multiplayer games on your Xbox console, you will need either Xbox Game Pass Core or Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which is $17 a month, no annual discount. If you already subscribed to Live Gold, it will automatically turn into Game Pass Core on September 14th. So what's the actual difference between the old Live Gold and the new Game Pass Core? Well, there used to be games with Gold. Every month you could add at least 2 games to your games library. And as long as you remain a subscriber, you could play those games anytime. Game Pass Core does away with the 2 games added every month. And instead, you now get a selection of at least 25 games curated from the full Game Pass library, with changes to that selections of 25 plus games only happening 2 or 3 times a year. Game Pass Core does not get brand new games on day 1 when they release. So, Game Pass Core, whatever. I'm getting confused by all this. Yeah. Anyways, so what if you want the full Game Pass library and new games on day 1? Well, that's now Xbox Game Pass Console, which is separate from the Game Pass Core, and it costs $11 a month. So you got to pay both of those things if you want them?
If you want the full Game Pass library and online multiplayer. Because Xbox Game Pass Console for $11 a month does not give you online multiplayer.
It just gives you games.
It just gives you a selection of games. So, I mean, if all you ever do is play by yourself at home and you don't do online multiplayer, you could do the $11 a month for console and you have hundreds of games available to you and brand new, anything that's published by Microsoft shows up there on day one, day and date. As long as you're a subscriber, you can play it. But yeah, if you want the online multiplayer, you have to have Core as well. So you could do $60 a year for Game Pass Core plus $11 a month for Game Pass Console and actually end up paying less than Game Pass Ultimate. But Ultimate has a couple other things added to it as well.
So Game Pass Ultimate, which again is $17 a month, so that's more than if you paid the $11 a month for Game Pass Console and also get a Core subscription, combines the online multiplayer of Core with the full library of day one of Console, and then also adds cloud gaming, EA Play, and PC Game Pass 2. 2 is not a number, it's T
as well. Also.
As well. Yeah. The PC Game Pass still exists as a standalone option for This is so stupid. I want to absolutely throw myself off of something high. PC Game Pass still exists as a standalone option for $10 a month, giving you the full PC Game Pass library, day one games, and EA Play, but no cloud gaming or console Game Pass. Just stop.
I know.
With the subscriptions. Just stop with the subscriptions or make them easier to understand. This is stupid. Right. This is dumb. God. It's so annoying. I mean, it's not like I'm incapable of understanding this.
Sure.
It's that I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to put this much thought into understanding your stupid subscription service tier levels that both overlap, are mutually exclusive, and independent, somehow all at the same time.
Seemingly so. I mean, what they really want you to do is go, well, forget, I'll just pay for Ultimate. That's what they really want you to do. That's their true goal, is to have everybody just pay $17 a month for Game Pass Ultimate and just get everything all together. But yeah, I mean, so bottom line is, if you don't have an Xbox, if you just play games on your Windows PC, Game Pass PC is a pretty darn good deal because it's just straight up $10 a month, which isn't too crazy. There's hundreds of games that you get to play. You get the brand new Microsoft published games on day one, and you get EA Play, which you could get separately. It's $6 a month separately, or maybe it's $7 a month now. I can't remember, but it's just part of it. So it's like, you know, PC Game Pass, if all you do is play games on your PC, pretty good deal. The rest of it, it's kind of like, okay, do you just want a bunch of games and you don't play online multiplayer? That's Game Pass Console. Do you want online multiplayer and you don't care about a whole bunch of games? That's Core, which is kind of a worse deal than Gold used to be, but it's the same price. And then they're like, yeah, forget all the complication, just get Ultimate. That's what they want you to do. But that's what it is going forward. Let's move on.
I wish I didn't know that. I wish that none of that information had made it into my brain.
Something got pushed out of your brain to make room for that.
I probably forgot somebody's name. Okay? If you guys wonder why I can't remember your stupid names, it's because of crap like this that I have to know. Blame Microsoft. Honestly, a lot of things in my life can be blamed directly by Microsoft. You know, I'm watching the tour, right?
Yes.
The highlights of the tour. Yeah. I've spent so much time trying to fix my system because the voices come out of all, like, first of all, it does the Atmos thing or the DTS thing where no matter what it comes everything in, it comes out as Atmos,
all
right?
All speakers make sound. Yeah.
So, but when it does that, for some reason, even though if I can put my ear next to every speaker in the front of my room, all three speakers in the front of my room, and the voices are coming out, they are so much louder out of the front left speaker that it's unbalanced, right?
Wonderful.
So the only way to hear it normally is to go back into the settings and put it into stereo mode and let my AV receiver do it, which does it perfectly well.
The point
AV
of this,
receiver,
what might have been missed is Tom is doing the streaming through his Xbox Series X. That's why it's Microsoft's fault.
This is why it's Microsoft's fault. You're right. And it's YouTube. It's dumb. I'm just so irritated all the time with my Microsoft Xbox. I'm just like, I wish I didn't use it. And I do. But why do I use it? Because every other box I have in this house is either more clunky or doesn't have all the streaming service.
I thought you had a Roku.
It doesn't have Twitch on there. And I watch Twitch all the stupid time. And so do my kids.
Gotcha.
AVRant. I'm banging my microphone. That's how mad I am.
That's right. That's what shock mounts are for. We
Don't
might
even
get
get
to
me
that.
started on my parents' Harmony remote. My parents got a new router.
Yeah.
My parents got a new router. It was like somebody threw an EMP into their house.
It would be. Yeah. Yeah, that is a pain when you get a new router. I feel you on that one.
Spent an hour reprogramming their remote.
Gotcha.
because the Hios bar would not get connected. So I deleted it and re-uploaded it, and it broke everything. So
Good times.
Good times. Comments from our listeners. James, after we discussed DJ's interview with Paul Hurt about reference volume over at the Brightside Home Theater podcast, James felt inspired to find out more. So he found a bunch of specifications and guides from Dolby, the ITU, not U. Believe me, every 5-year-old might be wanted to read that as UTI, which is
That's right.
not what that is. ITU, which is the International Telecommunications Union, EBU, which is European Broadcast Union, and the ATSC, which is the Advanced Television Systems Committee, that all discuss how to standardize measuring loudness, mastering content for distribution, and monitoring the mixing levels in studios.
Yeah, so there are a bunch of PDFs that he sent, so I will have those uploaded to my OneDrive, so there'll be a link in the show notes if you want to look at all of these PDF documents for yourself. It gets pretty darn technical.
So particularly important is the ITU's broadcast standard 1770. It's kind of a dog whistle for some people, which includes the K-weighted algorithm for measuring overall. I think it's 1760 is the dog whistle. I can't remember. Anyways, K-weighting algorithm for measuring overall subjective program loudness, as well as the anchor element of dialogue. Once this algorithm is applied, everything gets referred to in loudness units, which an increase in one loudness unit being equal to the increase of 1 decibel, but with K-weighting applied. In Europe, they tend to call the scale the LUFS, or the LUFS, the loudness units relative to full scale, while in the US, they tend to call the scale, I can't say that, LKFS for loudness units K-weighted relative to full scale.
Yeah. LUFS is better. Let's just say LUFS. That's an actual acronym that can be pronounced instead of just an initialism that can't be. Silly. LUFS is
The two names are now completely interchangeable, so we're going with LUFS.
That's right.
They end up normalizing the uncompressed stereo PCM mix to -3 LUFS, but for the home theater mixes, they're
-23.
23, sorry. And they're normalized to -31 LUFS.
For the home theater mix.
Yes.
Yeah, because LUFS take into account all of the sound. All of the surround sound, everything that's coming in. So the home theater mixes, the surround sound mixes are referenced to a different level than the stereo PCM mixes, where there's just the 2 channels because they're factoring in all of the sound sources throughout the entire movie.
So that still doesn't tell us how loud full scale actually is, though.
Yeah.
So of particular interest in reference to what Paul Hurt was talking about, the ATSC has a table that describes what the -20 dBc was a decibel C-weighted test tone?
C-weighted decibels. So that's our, in the full commercial movie theaters, 85 decibels, because we know full scale there is going to be 105 decibels maximum peaks. So the test signal that is used to set the channel trim levels comes out at -20 decibels full scale C-weighted, and that would be 85 in a full-size commercial movie theater.
So it describes what the -20 dBc test tone signals for calibrating your monitoring station should read on your SPL meter, and it's all dependent on your room size.
That's right.
So the bigger your room,
the louder
they'll be. Mm-hmm. Louder it needs to be.
That's right.
Something. I don't know. There's a graphic here that I'm sure Rob is showing, but it's just a table. And
you can see it on Flickr as well.
Only the largest dubbing stages, over 20,000 dubbing stages, I said that right, over 20,000 cubic feet set the -20 dBc test tones to 85 dB. Most rooms set them to 78 or 80, while the smallest rooms, under 1,500 cubic feet, set them to 76. So depending on your room size, full scale could be anywhere from 96 dBc up to 105 dBc. Supposedly when using LUFS, these settings keep things sounding subjectively equal, so the argument can definitely be made that we should consider adjusting our own listening levels at home to match these mixing studio guidelines. Again. Or you could just turn it up until it sounds right to you.
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, with the amount that they talk about, that anchoring element of focusing on a dialogue scene, which is exactly what Paul Hurt talked about, it's like, if you want to know whether you have reference volume set correctly in your home theater, find a dialogue scene where it's just normal people talking, not screaming, not whispering, and basically turn that up. If you want to measure it, then that's going to measure. So, I mean, they were talking about, the minus 31, right? So minus 31 is going to be somewhere, if it was the full-size commercial movie theater, is going to be somewhere in the 70s, right? So, you can do that. If you want to measure, or you can just be like, yeah, that sounds like about a normal conversational dialogue level, and then leave your volume there. That's probably correct.
Right. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird that we can go through all this. And this is, and I say this not being angry about it, which is weird for me to even contemplate. But oftentimes in science and in mathematics and, all the harder sciences, describing what people subjectively just sort of understand is usually the hardest thing to do.
Sure.
Like, it's like describing the color blue, right?
Yeah,
it's blue. It's kind of blue. It's bluish, blah, blah, blah. People understand what you're talking about. But to describe it in a mathematical
a truly objective way, yes,
ends up becoming so complicated that you're like... there is no easy answer to such easy things. Like I was watching a video about 1 + 1 equaling 2.
Oh, right, yeah.
How mathematics was broken multiple times by people who were like, "Yep, we gotta prove it. How do we prove it?" Everybody's like, "'Cause it is, you stupid person." But no, that they can't do it that way. So this kind of begs the question: how much does it actually matter? If you go back into your settings and you change where dynamic EQ kicks in, or you change where you you level match your speakers, if you change that, how much subjectively does that matter to your experience in your home theater?
Well, I mean, apparently it's going to depend quite a bit on your room. That's going to be a huge factor in it.
Yeah, because so many, but the fact of the matter is most of us who have an actual home theater aren't really dealing with 20,000 cubic feet or more rooms. We're usually dealing with
not
pretty
typical
small rooms. Yeah. And I think they're probably more similar than this similar, but let's go on. Brandon says we've helped him purchase several products, that doesn't sound like us, that he's enjoyed over the years, including Ascend and Sonance speakers, SVS subs, backer boxes, a Peerless mount, and more. He just wanted to share some photos he took of his old home theater setup that he has now left behind, having recently moved to a new house. Since he knew he was moving, he took the opportunity to try out a DIY acoustically transparent screen. It was just spandex material, but the point was to find out how his recessed acoustic treatments and center behind the screen ideas would pan out. So I guess he just strung this up somehow. It looks like really super professional. So
yeah, I think he made himself a bit of a frame there. It's kind of hard to see because everything is black on the front wall and all blends together. But yeah, looks like he made himself a frame and stretched some white spandex fabric across there to make an acoustically transparent DIY screen.
Yeah, it looks like a French cleat on top too.
Yeah,
that
is how it gets mentioned for sure.
Yeah, and this center channel, which looks entirely too small, is in line with his front speakers. So those of you that think it's looking pretty low, it's not. It's in line with the speakers. And no, the voices aren't going to sound like it's coming from people's ankles on the screen. It's going to sound just fine.
Eyes at the 1/3 of the way up the screen mark, so that's where things end up.
With just a 6-inch recessed area behind his screen, he hung his projection screen on the French cleat, look at me, giving just enough depth for his Ascend HTM200 SC center speaker. He also made 2 boxes, 12 by 16 by 9, out of furring strips and speaker grill cloth that he positioned below the screen. He wasn't able to treat the sidewall first reflection points or the back wall, but as we've been saying, having that bass trapping literally anywhere in the room makes a big difference, and certainly did in his case. Other than his center speaker, most of his other audio equipment stayed in the old house, so we'll be back soon with questions about his new setup. Okay.
Yep.
Sounds like a threat.
Yeah,
Marietta coffee.
Thank you for sharing those photos, and yeah, that's a very nice
cool,
setup
man.
that you had there. It's very cool, and so yeah, he'll take some of those ideas to the future setup in his new house.
I do like that. your future setup, don't put your subwoofer inside of a cabinet. Okay. Questions. Galen has 75-inch LG J85 series LCD TV. He got it back in 2017. All of his sources are plugged into his Pioneer Elite LX302 receiver, which then feeds the TV. He has recently started having problem where the TV randomly shuts itself off. Hello, HDMI CEC. Sometimes he'll go through a whole video or several hours of TV shows with no issue, but other times the TV will turn itself off after just 30 minutes or any length of time in between. If he simply turns the TV back on, it seems to work fine, but it might or might not turn itself back off after 30 minutes again.
Yeah.
He has made absolutely sure there's no sleep timer active. What else could it be? This is a new development, and the picture still looks flawless. So is it a failing power supply, or are there any options other than just to replace the whole TV? It's obviously out of warranty now, but should it have lasted longer? This 100,000% sounds like HDMI CEC.
I mean, so I do want to say it's not out of the realm of possibility of there being something wrong with a power supply. I had, going all the way back to the rear projection days, I had a Hitachi rear projection TV, still 4:3 aspect ratio back then, that started having an issue like this, and it was the power supply. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that that's what it is. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to get in touch with your TV manufacturer, even though you are out of warranty, getting in touch with them just to at least get the information on where you might have to go to get this thing repaired. That's not a terrible, way to proceed, but it's possible that this isn't just a failing power supply. So yeah, as Tom alluded to, HDMI CEC, is that what we're thinking? It could be.
Well, I mean, so most of the time when stuff like this happens, what it is that there's another device connected to your Pioneer that is somehow hijacking the HDMI CEC and saying, "Hey, I'm off. Everything else should be off too." And then it starts turning stuff off.
And especially when it's like seemingly about 30 minutes, that very well could be an Apple TV 4K or a Roku or some device like that, or it could be a games console too. One of those things that puts itself to sleep after a set amount of time.
And if you do have an Xbox, I will tell you, recently there has been an update that Xbox has changed the defaults so that your Xbox no longer just goes into like a standby mode.
That's right, yeah.
It goes all the way to sleep. It completely powers itself. It's a power saving issue.
That's right.
So if you have an Xbox someplace in your system that may never have caused a problem before, because you never had to worry about HDMI CEC because the HDMI because nothing else, you weren't having the issue.
That's right.
So why would you go through your system and turn things off? And you're like, well, what? HDMI CEC shouldn't be enabled by default. It is.
Oh, definitely.
It always is.
It's definitely enabled by default. And as we might get to another question in the future, turning off HDMI CEC in, let's say, your television, is not enough to disable all of HDMI CEC in all the things. It's like if one device still has HDMI CEC still turned on, for some reason that's enough to like override the fact that you've turned it off in other devices. There'll still be power things, or like it seems to be impossible to stop the volume controls from punching their way through from on, say, your streaming device, going all the way through your TV into your soundbar. It seems to be impossible to turn off the volume punching through, even if you turn HDMI CEC off in every single one of those devices. So yeah, the possibility that, particularly, like Tom just said with the Xbox, because we know there was a recent update that had to do with power saving modes, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. It was some other device, a Chromecast or an Apple TV or something like that, had a recent firmware update, reset HDMI CEC to on after it rebooted itself, and that could be potentially the cause of your issue. So in the setup that you have, you didn't describe anything. I mean, maybe you're using HDMI CEC for some reason. HDMI return, audio return channel would be the main culprit, but it didn't sound like your system is one where you would necessarily need to use that. If all your sources are plugged into your AV receiver, and then your AV receiver acts as the HDMI switch and feeds everything through one HDMI connection to your TV, you don't really need to have HDMI CEC on in any of your devices, but it is a matter of literally going through all of them and deactivating HDMI CEC, because if it's a setting, it's almost certainly that. Otherwise, it could be a failing power supply. It's not out of the question.
It's not right. occasionally what'll happen here is somebody will come up with a problem and we're like, the solution is usually this.
Yeah.
And it turns out it's not. It is an actual faulty device. It happens.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
You know, and they're like, well, they don't know what we're talking about. I'm like, 90% of the time or more, it's this one thing. We're going to say it's the one thing. Sometimes we don't give the caveats that Rob just gave that it could be. We're like, yeah, it's HDMI-CC for sure. Which I am very sure it's HDMI-CC, and I would bet you have an Xbox someplace in there.
Could be.
But
it would be very unsurprising if that were the case.
The fact is that it can always be something else.
Yeah.
It can always be something even more random than
if
what
it
we think.
Does turn out to be a failing power supply, should a television from LG last more than 6 years? Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, it shouldn't fail that quickly. It would be out of warranty. I wouldn't get mad at them if they're like, yeah, it will cost something to repair it. It's fair enough to say we have a warranty period, you've gone past that warranty period, and now it costs some money to repair it. That's not unreasonable as a business practice. We love it when companies stand behind their products more than that, but you can't get mad at a company for actually saying, no, we gave you a 3-year warranty or whatever it was, and now it's 6 years, so you got to pay something. That is perfectly fair if that's what it ends up being, but it could be that. It's still worth checking with them.
Yes, I agree. Brandon has enjoyed his 7.1 home theater setup for many years. He's got NHT speakers all around, the 2005 models, along with the Paradigm DSP 3400 subwoofer, which is a 14-inch driver with a 300-watt amplifier and a dual-ported design. He's using a Denon X3800H receiver that he just bought and a SoundBar Grand Cinema amplifier that powers just his front 3 speakers. His NHT center surrounds and surround backs are all set to small, but his NHT 3.3 towers have a 12-inch, oh my god, here we go, 12-inch side-firing woofer built into each of them, and he has those speakers set to large. NHT specs say that they reach down to 23 hertz at minus 2 dB in room, in the closet. Stereophiles and anechoic measurements show a minus 3 dB point about 33 hertz. Meanwhile, his 14-inch Paradigm sub has their DIN spec, which is another
pretty similar to what
thing.
You just mentioned, actually, though.
Yeah.
Pretty darn similar, to be truthful. Yeah, so whatever number is there is very similar to that 23 hertz rating that they gave for the extension of the towers in room. The DIN spec is pretty darn similar to that, and you can go up about 10 hertz to where the minus 3 dB anechoic point probably is.
Right. So the DIN, or the in-room spec, listed low-end extension that's pegged at 19 hertz. After listening to us, he's now worried he needs dual subs, proper sound treatments, and a different speaker calibration. You are correct. Look at you. I didn't have to say it to you. I'm so proud of you. I am. I'm honestly proud that he's like, uh-oh. I've listened to these guys enough that I think maybe something's wrong here. And you know what? Here's the thing. Here's the real thing. It sounded fine this whole time to you, for the most part. Yeah, it's probably found. You're like, I think it sounds really good in here. It probably does.
Oh yeah.
And compared to every other room you've been in, which is all of your friends and all of your family combined, you're 1,000 times better.
I guarantee this sounds better than a TV speakers and better than a soundbar.
I guarantee that. And if you've been to somebody's house where they've had a home theater professionally installed with Bose speakers high up near the ceilings and everything else,
or
sounds better
all
than
the
that
speakers
too.
in the ceiling, which is very common in very expensive installations.
So when we talk about these things, and we're going to talk about it specifically about you, but in general, when we talk about these things and getting the best sound, a lot of times people are like, I don't understand why you're saying my sound isn't good. We're not. We're saying it could be better.
Sure.
And with very little effort on your part. Like, I don't even necessarily think you have to buy anything new right away. We're going to talk about what to buy. But with just setting things up differently and running a different calibration and moving your subwoofers and moving your speakers and changing, just changing settings and maybe a little bit of placement, a lot of times you can implement 80% of what we're saying without ever having bought anything if you have some sort of baseline equipment that's not so bad. And good on you for coming to this point where you're like, okay, wait a second, I think maybe I can improve. And you're right, you can, and we're going to help you. All right. To start with, would he benefit from adding another subwoofer despite the front large tower speakers that he already has in use? Please stop with the tower speakers. Please stop with the tower speakers.
But
stop.
they have subwoofer drivers
I don't
built
care
in.
if they're sitting on top of an SVS subwoofer. Stop with the tower speakers. All right. And if he does have another subwoofer, should it be identical, or could he mix and match with different brand and or model? Okay, so let's just... I actually don't want to start here, but this is where he wants to start.
Yeah, this is his first question that he wants to ask.
Yeah. So first of all, if you go online and you look at the Flickr album, or if you watch our YouTube video, you're going to be seeing some images of this person's theater, whose name I've already forgotten because of the stupid Microsoft stuff that got stuck in my brain. Now, what you're going to notice is that they've already got some room treatments up.
Oh, yes. Yep.
They have their subwoofer placed in the front left corner outside of their main speaker. The right wall is got a curtain over it for light blockage, and hopefully not because he thinks it's going to do anything for sound. But it is that the right wall is open slightly, and it looks like I can't
home
tell.
gym equipment.
Yeah. So maybe this room is double its size, and it's taking the left, or maybe a third more over
pretty
to
close
the right.
To it,
yeah. So and there's some exercise equipment on that side, and the screen, the curtain covers that so that you can block that out.
And it does look like there's stairs going up with no door at the bottom of the stairs. I don't know if there's a door at the top of the stairs. There's just a little bit peeking out from behind the curtain in one of the shots. We can see the bottom of the stairwell that does not have a door on the bottom of the stairs.
Yes.
But there might be a door at the top of the stairs. We don't know.
We don't know. We don't know what's up there, but hopefully there's a door at the top there. Okay, so now we're kind of taking a look at that right now.
Yeah.
So he asked, and this is just his first and only question?
Yeah,
That's
for now.
Only question?
Yeah, because he wants to go through things, but he's doing it one at a time.
Would he benefit from adding another sub despite the front large? Yes, okay. So, and does he need the sub to be identical? So your subwoofer, which is probably closer to a 30 hertz sub than a 20 hertz sub.
Yeah.
In here because of how Paradigm
rates it,
unfortunately. And that's a custom driver. That 14-inch driver.
It would be, yeah. But that with a 300 watt amplifier, that's not ridiculous. Yeah, I'd expect it to reach, maybe the mid 20s at the most. Yeah.
So the question should you get a second sub, and should it match? You should get two subs, and neither of them should be this one. So, in my opinion,
if you were, I would say if you're going to buy something, I would get two new subwoofers. If you're going to buy something, that's what I would buy. Would be two new subwoofers.
You will be able to sell this, I believe.
I think so.
Might not I don't think you'll maybe get a ton of cash for it, but there are lots of people. There's, first of all, Paradigm, well-known brand. People will want it, and they will recognize it. And even if they don't really know anything about subwoofers and they're just thinking about getting a sub, they're going to know that name. Well, I think probably even more than they would know a name like SVS or HSU or something like that.
Yeah, so and this isn't a matter of that we care about matching the brand or anything like that. We're just saying that what we wouldn't favor doing is so you could get another sub with very similar specs and output to the sub that you already have, and it wouldn't matter that it's a different brand. That would be totally fine.
Yes.
But what we would like to do is get a sub that can dig deeper than the sub that you already have, and then we wouldn't want its partner to be the sub that you already have, because now it's like weakest link in the chain. You're really back to just one sub below 30 hertz, and that's not what we want. So we're saying if we're going to get a subwoofer upgrade, then we would want to get a subwoofer upgrade and then also have a partner to that new sub. They don't necessarily have to be identical, but we want both of your new subs to dig right down to 20 hertz.
Yes.
And since the room acoustically is larger than just the home theater area, we are really, really hoping you have a door at the top of the stairs, because otherwise it's not really going to be feasible to pressurize the home theater, because now we're talking about pressurizing your entire house, which is not a pleasant or desirable thing to do.
Right.
So as long as there's a door at the top of those stairs, we just have to realize this room, acoustically speaking, is larger than just the theater area. You actually need a pretty darn capable sub to pressurize, right down to 20 hertz. That's going to be a pretty substantial upgrade.
Yes. And not only that, let's just assume that there's a door at the top of the stairs, right? So, when we talk about placement here, and your placement is probably fine. You have lots of options in here because this is really a dedicated space, and I mean, it does have the gym on the other side, but it's a dedicated space. So what I would recommend doing when you get the two subs of whichever one's there, first of all, calculate the cubic area that you actually have. Okay, and let's hope that those stairs are have the door at the top. Calculate that cubic area, and then most subwoofer manufacturers, if you just say this is how much cubic space I have, which of your subs will pressurize it, they will tell you. They'll say this and above. This and above will,
for me,
will
just
pressurize that.
eyeballing it, and this is an approximation, just eyeballing it, but if there's a door at the top of the stairs, then eyeballing it, I'd be like, in the SVS lineup, probably a pair of PB3000s. That looks about right for this size room. Yeah. In the monolith lineup, which you might get a little bit better of a price break there, it would be like the regular 15-incher, the ported 15-incher that they have. That would be very, very sufficient for this room size. Eyeballing it,
Yeah. So the problem here is, then you'll ask yourself, is placement, right? And remember that we're not talking about placement within the theater area. We're talking about placement within the
entire
room.
Acoustic area of everything where the air can move.
That's right. So where would you place these subs? Well, if it were me, I would place it in the middle of the front wall, in the middle of the back wall, if possible. I don't know what's really behind this.
Actual middle, not just the middle of the theater area front wall, which means like basically both subs would be to the right-hand side of your theater area.
Yes.
That's what we'd be ending up at.
That's what I think, based on what I'm seeing here.
That would probably make the most sense. And physically, it looks like it's doable.
You could put them in opposing corners, or somewhat in opposing corners.
Yep.
But remember that it's the entire
space, including your gym
one of them's going to end up in the gym area, basically.
That's right.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just what it is. I imagine that you're not usually using the gym and watching theater at the same time, but maybe you are. I mean, I used to have an elliptical. My parents, had an elliptical machine in their the same room where they had their TV, and I used to watch TV and do the elliptical all the time. It was very nice. So that's where I would start. You will run your. I know you're going to ask about calibration later, but yes, run your main speakers as small, please.
Yes, we would. Yep.
Okay. Yep. Even now, with your current sub, change it immediately.
So the other part that I wanted to get into is, let's say you just like, okay, yeah, I like that idea. I want to get a pair of PB3000s. I want to get a pair of monolith 15-inchers, but I just don't have that kind of money on hand right this second.
Yes.
What could I try doing without spending any money? And one thing you could try, because it turns out the extension of the Paradigm subwoofer you have right now and the extension of your NHT towers are actually pretty similar. So one thing you could do is you could leave your towers set to large, as they already are. You could physically move the subwoofer that you have to the back of your theater area instead of having it up at the front where it is right now. And you could actually turn on that double bass feature, or the LFE plus main feature. In your Denon, it would be called LFE plus main. So what that would be doing is sending the low frequency effects channel and the bass from all the speakers that you have set to small to both your pair of towers at the front of the room and the subwoofer at the back of the room. And you would get a little bit of the experience of having, bass being produced across the room from each other. Because right now, all the bass in your system is coming from the front of the room. You have no sound-producing things at the back of your room to even out across your seating area what's going on there. So in terms of uniformity, you could improve what you have just with a positioning change of your subwoofer and not purchasing a thing. And you can give that a try. That's free.
And remember, the way there is no way to do this correctly, really, without some sort of crazy measurement system or a bunch of trial and error and stuff. But if it were me, what I would do is I would take the midpoint, like basically where your center speaker is, between your two main speakers, look at that point on the wall, and then do the mirrored on the back wall where place your subwoofer there.
Yeah, so if you're like 9 feet from the left wall where your center speaker is, then you're going to be like 9 feet from the back wall at the back of your room for where the subwoofer goes.
9 feet from the right wall.
From the right wall at the back of
at the back of your room. So you're going to come in that far. And that would be I think that would be a good starting point if you were to do this.
Oh, that's something to try. I mean, if you're, willing, if you got more time than money right now, that's something you could give a try.
While you're waiting for your new subs to come in.
That's true, yeah. They won't arrive instantly.
Try this now, right? And then see how that sounds, and then you'll see how it sounds when you have two new subs come in.
That's right.
Kiran in India. Kiran, first off, what would be the benefits, if any, of going with self-power active speakers for your front, left, right, center, rather than the typical passive speakers that we're used to with a separate 3-channel amplifier? What would be the benefits? Nothing. There's no benefits. I hate this idea. I always have.
I mean, I don't hate the idea. I mean, there's the whole thing of you don't have to worry about, did I get the correct amplifier to maximize the capability of my speakers? The manufacturer already chose that for you. So there's some simplification in that sense. And he is specifically talking about fully active speakers. So there is a distinction. There's self-powered speakers, which is, okay, there's amplification built in, but the crossover, as long as it's at least a two-way speaker or a three-way speaker, the crossovers between the drivers in a self-powered speaker are still a traditional crossover, built with capacitors and inductors and resistors, still the normal crossover we're used to. In a fully active speaker, the crossover is actually something akin to a mini DSP, like it's circuitry built in there instead of it just being, passive components, capacitors and inductors, and that it's a fully active microchip that's actually doing the filtering. Right. So there can be an argument made that in some designs that use very steep crossover slopes, and I mean, this is a choice. It's not like a inherent right or wrong, but some speaker designs use a very steep slope between the tweeter and the midwoofer or the midwoofer and the bass woofers, and it can be less expensive to do that with a fully active crossover, because to create a very steep slope with tight tolerances can be many not inexpensive components in a passive crossover.
You're answering the second question. So,
there we go.
Yeah, let me go back to the first question, which again is what are the benefits of any of going with self-powered active speakers? Yeah. Well, which I said there's none. Obviously, there's not none. There's always some. The drawbacks though are so numerous as to make any, in my mind, any reason for going with powered speakers moot. Or any justification moot. And that is because, first of all, in order to have active speakers in your system, you have to have pre-outs on your AV receiver. Which
definitely.
In our small group of listeners and people who are interested in this podcast, it's a non-issue, because we're all like
everybody's
we
looking
get pre-outs
for 11,
whether we want them or not.
Yeah, 11 channel receivers, they're going to have pre-outs, but for a lot of people who are getting the 5.1 or 7.1 receivers at a lower cost, they don't necessarily have pre-outs.
And then you're dealing with the whole idea of having to have RCA cables to run to each one of your speakers. And instead of having speaker wire, which is thin and small and very easy to run into a wall, you have these massive coaxial, they're big in comparison, coaxial cables that have to be run to every single speaker in your system, or even the front three. Now you've got these big old cables that have to go up there. And if you're using something like a KEF, and KEF has active speakers, which I think are probably sound really good, and I got no problems with them. But you run the cables to one, and then you run speaker wire from the one to the other.
That's true,
or you can, or you connect them via Bluetooth, and God help you if anything goes wrong there, if somebody uses a microwave in the room. So there's, to me, you end up with, and we're going to talk a little bit, there's some of the other drawbacks that I'm not mentioning because I know I'm going to mention them later on in these questions, but there's so many things, so much added cost and complexity that you'll leave the amplifiers into the AV receiver, which, sure, now that if your speakers have amplifiers in them already, you don't ever have to upgrade those, right? But you could upgrade the amplifiers in your AV receiver by either getting a nicer AV receiver or getting external amplification, and then suddenly your speakers have more power available to them. It means they can play louder. Maybe the amps that are in them are already able to push them as loud as they possibly can go. Or maybe they ran out of space in the back of those cabinets and they can only get them to what they consider to be a reasonable level. And now you're done. You can turn them up no louder.
So I'm going to take the other side of this argument, which is that in a fully active speaker, again, so we can skip the second question, which was, what's the difference between basically fully active and passive? But in a fully active speaker, there's the opportunity there to not just have digital filtering in the crossovers, but to actually apply EQ to each driver individually. That can all be done if that's the circuitry that they've chosen to build in. And so what can happen there is you can end up with the scenario where, the easiest example is take an iPhone, right? The speaker that's built into an iPhone is at teeny, tiny little thing. And if that were just driven with a linear amplifier with no filtering or equalization applied to that tiny, tiny little driver that's acting as a speaker in the phone, it would sound absolutely atrocious.
Right.
But it sounds remarkably okay playing things out of the built-in speaker in an iPhone because there is a tremendous amount of active filtering and EQ being applied to that. So extending that to a full-sized monitor speaker or a tower speaker, it's not out of the realm of possibility of, you can take perhaps a less expensive driver, where if the driver were just driven completely linearly and passively, it wouldn't respond completely linear to the signal. But it's an EQable driver, and you can do that with a fully active design, or even, going towards the high end, you get very good drivers, but you can maximize their linearity in terms of what's coming out of them anechoically, because you have the equalization built right in and attached directly to the driver. So there's some argument that can be made there for, the nth degree of refinement being done inside the speaker itself, which you could at least, if you're, measuring it anechoically, really level that out. That's the argument. I know. We've got speakers that are darn good and passive. That's the thing. But
the extra cost. Okay, anyways. So if you're using self-powered active speakers, each and every speaker needs its own electrical outlet, right? Is there any benefit to that versus using a 3-channel amp with a single power cord to all 3 of these channels? Again, you deal with the space that's within the enclosure of the of the speaker, because let's face it, 99.9% of self-powered speakers, that's not like there's an external amp sitting next to it that can be as big as it needs to be.
Although, the JBL M2s, that's what it is.
That's why I said 99.9%. Right. There's a couple of high end ones that come with external amplification. Yeah. But for the most part, they're all built into the cabinet. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, like I said with the CAFs, they're built into the cabinet, and then there's another wire that runs to the other one. Yeah. So
there's actually 2 amplifiers in one of the cabinets and 0 in the other.
So let's pretend that each one has its own amplifier built in. So They're individual. Even then, how big of a power supply do you have inside each one of those? Is it just big enough to do what it needs to do? Or is it extra big so that if there's a huge power draw for some reason, there is essentially a reserve there, or what everybody likes to call headroom. Mm-hmm. Could there be headroom in your external amplifier? A lot of times that's what you get. You get this massive transformer, mm-hmm. That's built to provide gobs of power instantaneously when it needs to, and then for the most part, is putting out very, very little power, because that's what we normally use when we're mm-hmm. using our home theater. So for me, I think that this is actually more of a drawback than a benefit. What you're saying is, hey, now I don't have to share power with anybody, but the pool of power that you're drawing from is going to be, or theoretically could be, much smaller than what you would get if you had a dedicated 3-channel amplifier for some passive speakers.
Yeah, from my take, the concerns about not every self-powered speaker necessarily has a power cord to each speaker, because exactly like Tom said, sometimes the amplification is all built into one of them, and it would only work as a pair. So there's that. But yes, for the ones that do, it's not like intrinsically there's going to be some kind of difference to having a 3-channel power amp versus each speaker being plugged in. But you do have to have the physical capability to plug it into a wall somewhere, so that might be somewhat of a consideration. But otherwise, I don't think there's any intrinsic benefit or detriment to doing things either way.
Right. So would the active speakers potentially be more prone to needing repairs over time? I don't necessarily think so. I don't see any reason why that would be, except for the fact that it becomes harder to protect each one of these individually placed around your room devices. Whereas in a home theater, more traditional home theater setup with the amplifiers and the receiver, or just the receiver, in a rack, and then the speaker wire going out to each one of the speakers, you can protect that very easily by plugging it into an APC, or one of the many home theater specific or computer UPS uninterruptible power supplies that we often recommend that can help protect all your gear. Now you need one of those for every single one of these, every single speaker that are all around the room, and those things can be pricey. Okay, so between all that, and again, you're talking about an amplifier, so you don't want to just plug it into a normal power strip because they usually limit you to 10 amps anyways. So if you want the full 15 amps, then you need to get a better one, or something that has more power or allows more power through and has the proper filtering. If you want to have filtering on your speakers, you're worried about that, or you may just get that anyways because you're looking for something that'll send through 15 amps, and you got everything else. So now you're adding that extra cost on there. So would it potentially be more prone to needing repairs? Only if you didn't protect them properly, spend the money to protect them.
You got a lightning strike on your house, and now you blew a whole bunch of things. Yeah, that could be the reason.
Yeah. So that's our take there. Chris's backyard and pool were under construction. They just finished, so still some summertime left to enjoy several pool parties. It's too dang hot.
We don't know where Chris is, though.
I don't know where you are, but if you're anywhere near me, people are like, I can't use my pool. It's like almost 100 degrees in there. It's boiling in that thing. He'd like a portable projection screen and a projector he could take outside to play movies in the backyard. What would we recommend? There's like a bunch of inflatable ones, which I think are all garbage. But
I'm not a big fan of the inflatable ones.
But there are big ones that you can get. Really, the solution is a wall on your house with no window on it. Now, if it doesn't exist, then you're going to have to. And I say that simply because it's the easiest thing to do. It's the easiest thing to do, and because who cares about color correction, color correctness outside, right? You're going to be dealing with ambient light, even if it's dark. There's going to be ambient light.
There's still some, yes.
Right? There's going to be some street lights on shining yellow, or in my neighborhood, not my neighborhood, but in this part of town, they have LED lights that they installed, and the filters that are on them are wrong.
Okay.
So because LED lights they are a color. So if you want them to be a specific color, they have to have filters on them to make them be that color. Well, there's a bunch of street lamps around here that are purple. Nice. Because the bulbs they installed don't have the proper filters on them, and there's all these purple streetlights for no apparent reason. So there's some that kind of snap up and they go into frames. They're not super hard, and they're meant to be taken down and put up. So I'm sure Roy has some recommendations.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest you go with Elite screens because for a reasonable price, and they've got a nice selection. So they have a couple only available in 84 and 92-inch sizes that are like self pop up. Very, very convenient if that's what you want. I don't know if you've ever seen those shades that go across the your windshield to block out the sun when it's parked. That just they kind of collapse down. You kind of twist them and they collapse down and then they pop open kind of a spring action. That's what these screens do, but only up to a maximum 92-inch size. So that's $155 for the 92-inch if you want something that simple and 92 is big enough. Otherwise, Elite has their Yard Master screens, which are just an aluminum frame and a screen that you snap up there. You take the screen down, you roll it back up, you unsnap the fit together aluminum frame, and that's what you do with the Yardmaster series. So those go anywhere from 75 up to 135 inches, which should be sufficient for your backyard there. And like the 120-inch size, that is very popular, $230. So, not outlandish for something that you can definitely put out there and use in the outdoors. So then as far as what projectors to go for, I'm going to go in ascending order of price. If 1080p is perfectly fine for you, then for $500, you could get Optima's HD 28 HDR, which is a pretty interesting little unit. 3600 lumens, which is one of the things you want. Nice and bright, so it's going to be able to overcome some evening when it's, still a little bit of light out, but dim. But nice and bright for that. 1080p only, of course, but this actually can accept a 4K and an HDR10 signal. It can't genuinely show you those things, but it can take those signals. So if you have a bunch of Ultra HD Blu-rays that you want to play on, it's not like it's going to reject those things. It can absolutely take that signal and play them. So that's kind of a nice thing. And for $500, not a bad deal at all. For $600, they have their HD 146X, which is still 1080p, still 3600 lumens, cannot do the accepting of a 4K and HDR signal. It is 1080p only. But this one is a bit more color accurate. So if you care more about that and you're willing to pay $100 more but give up the 4K and HDR compatibility, there is Optima's HD146X. Then one thing that you might want to consider is not ultra short throw, but short throw. Regular short throw, because sometimes it's nice to be able to put the projector about 4 feet in front of the screen instead of 8 or 9 feet away from the screen. So BenQ has a model for $750. That's the TH671ST, ST standing for short throw. This again, 1080p only, 3000 lumens, but it gives you that short throw lens. So yeah, you can put it about 4 feet away from the screen and get your 100-inch image. And sometimes that's really convenient in the backyard setting. And then it's got speakers that fire out the back of the projectors, so they're not very good speakers, but you can get sound all in one out of that thing if you want to. $800 from BenQ gets you their TH685P. This is sort of similar to the $500 Optima model in that it is a 1080p panel. It is showing 1080p resolution, but it can accept a 4K and an HDR signal, 3500 lumens. It can actually go up to 1080p 120 if you want to do some high frame rate gaming. And from BenQ, it has the higher color accuracy as well. So for $300, that's what you would really be paying for, is the better color accuracy over the Optima option. If you want to get to a projector that you could use in your home theater and outside, then you could look to stepping up to a much different price class, $1,700. BenQ's HT3560, brand new model. This is true 4K resolution. It's a 1080p panel, but they wobble it around 4 times per frame to give you true 4K resolution up on screen. So full 4K, full HD, really, really good projector for $1,700 in your home theater. It's 2000 lumens, so it's not going to be the brightest thing if you take it outside. But you'll notice that everything I'm mentioning is DLP. That's because if you're going outside, I want something with a sealed light path, no open air thing that needs a filter. So DLP is the way to go for anything that you might use outside. Last one I'll mention, $1,800 can get you BenQ's X3000i. This is pretty similar actually to the 3560. The form factor looks totally different, but performance-wise it's pretty similar. But this is a LED light source. All the other ones are lamps. So if you want one that doesn't even have a replaceable lamp in it and lasts about 20,000 hours before those LEDs are at half their brightness, this is full 4K resolution, HDR compatible, the X3000i from BenQ for $1,800. So out of that whole selection, I think something is going to make sense to you. And yeah, you can definitely do all of this for under $1,000 for sure.
I'm going to suggest that you consider highly getting the smallest possible screen that you think will work for your situation, and moving it as close as possible to the people that you're there, and that way you get the field of view that you're kind of looking for, but it also maximizes the brightness coming off the screen.
It does, yeah.
So no matter which projector you go with, if you're like, oh well, the 135 inch is only this much more than the 120 inch, yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. Get the smallest one you can, because that will give you the brightest image, and it'll allow you to start your movie earlier in the evening. Chris's backyard and pool. Oh, I already did this one.
We did that one. We're on to Ryan now, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't scroll. Ryan is doing some minor renovations to create a fully dedicated home theater room. They'll be small, about 11 by 13 feet, and fully enclosed with total light control and painted a dark color. That's right. He doesn't want to tell us that's not going to be gray. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
We're okay with it.
We're okay, believe me. He found a deal on a Best Buy Geek Squad certified open box projector, the Sony VW325ES, which is genuine 4K resolution, SXRD model. That is now discontinued. It was $5,500 when it was new, but he got it for $1,900. Any reason to think it wouldn't be a good projector for his new room? Nope, unless the bulb is bad, in which case I see
sure.
Maybe, so I know.
Yeah. No, it's a great. It remains a great projector. Yeah. It was like basically the least expensive of the genuine 4K, right? No panel wobbling going on. The panel itself inside of there is actual 4K resolution. So it was like the least expensive of those, still lamp based, which honestly I kind of like. And you got a really good price on it. You got it for less than what like an Epson 5050 costs. So you got a tremendously good projector for that price, and no reason to send that back.
Yeah. The Best Buy salesperson tried to sell him Screen Innovations 100-inch slate screen. It would have been more than the projector at $2,200. That seemed crazy to him. So he took to the internet to figure out which screen to get. From what he could gather in his setup, he shouldn't need an ambient light rejecting or a high gain screen. Just a plain white screen should work well for him, right? Yeah, you have light control. For the love of God, will people stop buying ambient light reject? I wrote an article about it. Do I have that published yet?
I don't
Hold
know.
on. I wrote an article about ambient light rejecting screens and how people have got to stop buying them. They have got to stop buying them.
It's nice that they exist for the certain situations where just a plain white screen would really look terrible. I'm glad ambient light rejecting screens exist, but it doesn't mean that they're the right tool for every single job. And for the what you're doing, renovating this room to make it fully enclosed, totally light controlled, no sources of light, and painted a dark color, you should just get a white screen, 100%.
I mean, and I think the article was specific, and I haven't published it yet. The article I wrote was specifically targeting UST, or ultra short throw projectors. And the idea here is that ultra short throw projectors are often talked about hand in hand with ambient light rejecting screens as being a necessity. Yeah. Like you cannot get one
marketed as
the
a
other.
Laser TV, in fact. Yeah.
Yes. And it's just not true. You don't need ambient light rejecting on a ultra short throw projector
if your room is dark.
if you have light control in your room.
Yeah.
It's so infuriating. So yes, they were upselling you. Yes, they may have been ignorant about the fact that what they were selling you was something that would actively look bad in your room. It would not be a good fit for your room. But they have been told that gray screens increase black levels, which is true, but unimportant. You don't
really need with a nice SXRD projector. They got darn good black levels on those.
And if you have no ambient light to reject, there's no point to having an ambient light rejecting screen, and it will hotspot and look terrible.
White screen for you.
Yes. He is coming from an LG C1 OLED, so he knows the projection setup won't equal those black levels, but he still wants the best image quality he can possibly get from this projector. Is there anything about the inexpensive silver ticket screens that would prevent him from achieving that? He's seen some vague responses online, mostly saying that the frame isn't as good as the $2,000 screens, but he isn't terribly concerned about that as long as the screen itself performs really well. He's seen some mention of screen textures or the particular way the light is reflected off the screen, but no real clear explanations. So what do we say? Would a much more expensive screen be worth it, or can he just get a silver ticket and honestly still achieve the best possible image? So the things that you're concerned about as far as texture, a lot of times that's hand in hand with acoustically transparent.
It can be, yep.
And we see that in screens that the weave isn't very tight or the perforations are a little bit too big. And that's not something that you need to be worried about here. It depends on how close you're sitting to the screen, of course. That can happen, but I mean, I've got a screen. What do I have?
Yeah, you got a silver ticket.
Yeah, I have a silver ticket, and I sit 10 feet,
just their regular white.
Yeah, from a 92-inch or 95-inch or whatever this thing is screen, and I've never once seen a texture or any of that.
Yeah, I mean, there can be textures on the ambient light rejecting screens too. They got that Seraform pattern on them, and there can be textures visible on there, or the micro dots that some of them use.
Yeah, you'd be worried about is if there was a non-uniformity to how it reflected light, and that
comes along with high gain.
Yeah, that can be a consideration with your less expensive screens, but and what you're going to be getting, I would 100% recommend that you get the silver ticket.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's what I would get for myself. I mean, I will grant you, there are nicer frames. There absolutely are. But I'm also looking like this is a pretty small room. The next screen that you buy might very well be because you move to a larger room and want a larger screen. So this whole thing of buy once, cry once, and it's like, a screen can last you a long, long time, invest in the nicer thing. It's like, that only works if you're never changing the size. And I suspect that the next screen you buy might be a different size. So I would much rather have spent $250, $300 and then change my size later on than spending, $2,000 just to get the nicer frame. That doesn't make sense to me here when you're not going to see the frame when the lights are out, right? So I'm not too worried about that on that front. I'm going to link you up in the show notes to Chris Heinenen's excellent review that he did for the Wirecutter back when he worked for them, which actually is what turned me on to the silver ticket screens.
Right. So I remember this article. It's been a long time.
Yeah, because I mean, he really explains exactly why the silver tickets really are such a fantastic deal. And there, the technical answer is, right, if you are mastering content, or if you are a reviewer where you're trying to avoid the screen imparting any type of color shift, the slightest bit. What you really want to do is be able to measure off the screen and know that it was the projector that had something different with it, that the screen didn't impart anything to it. Well, then you might invest in a Stewart film screen, Studio Tech 100, the absolute most neutral thing that there is, right? Fine. I have no problem with that. But the silver ticket screen, like Chris Heinen measured it, and he's like, yeah, there's a tiny little bit of color shift. It is not absolutely perfectly neutral. It is so little of a color shift that you can absolutely calibrate the projector to get around it, right? It's not that type of error where you can't. So what I'm getting at is you're not going to be changing projectors all the time and evaluating them. That's not what you're buying your screen for. You've got one projector that you already bought. It is absolutely able to be calibrated on the silver ticket screen. So that's not the issue. So if you're like, is there anything technically slightly better than the silver ticket screen? Yes, that is the truthful answer, but you don't have to worry about it because the ever so slight color error that the silver ticket has is absolutely something you can calibrate around, and that's the final answer on that one.
His intention was just to get a fixed frame screen, and use the projector for everything in his dedicated theater room. This would be for movies, TV shows, and sports, not so much for gaming. So would it make sense to mount his OLED in this room and buy a motorized screen that comes down in front of it, or just have the projector as the only display in this room? Let me rephrase this question. Should I spend a bunch of extra money and do a bunch of extra work for something that I'm never going to use, or should I not do that? Because
also, 11 feet by 13 feet. You're never doing the two screen thing in here. Nope, projector only.
Projector only. As someone who has a room with nothing but a projector in it, do that. Do that. Yeah, that's what I would do. I would also start looking for, like, keeping an eye on some of those bulbs websites, and visit them every once in a while to see if there's a sale. One of these, sales that come up. Just pick up a spare.
Yeah,
because
it is a discontinued projector model, so they won't necessarily be around forever.
And it depends. And like, if you have kids, and I do, I will sometimes come home and they'll be all around the house, and the home theater will be up and running. Image projected on the screen.
Nobody in
Xbox. Nobody in there, and you just watch. It's like money flying out the window. So yes, buy an extra bulb. Ari has an Insignia NS70F301 TV, whatever. Jeez, Insignia.
As a model number. 70 inches, F301 series.
Okay. TV connected to a Denon X2500H receiver. He says that he is using the ER connection. No, he's not. But as far as you're aware, the 2500 only has a regular ARC, not EARC. Regardless, what he wants to do is use the TV's built-in over-the-air antenna connection. He's got an antenna connected directly to the TV, and image and sound are coming in just fine on the TV itself. But then when he goes to use this X2500H, no sound comes out. The ARC connection doesn't seem to be working. He's got his Apple TV 4K plugged in the TV, and that seems to work just fine with sound coming out of his X2500H via the ARC connection. He's gone through the TV settings and the receiver settings, but he can't seem to find anything to get the antenna TV sound working. Any ideas? I think this is just an incapable. It can't take that analog signal and.
It's not analog. No, it's
it's right.
ATSC is a digital signal.
It's digital signal. It just can't take that sound and send it via HDMI. Would be my guess, but I mean, I don't know. What else.
It should be able to.
It's a Signia TV. It should do a lot of things that it doesn't do. When you want me to tell you.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the only thing I could suggest to you here is normally when we're using HDMI-ARC, we're used to relying on the HDMI CEC part of it to like automatically, so that anytime sound's coming out of the HDMI-ARC port of the television, that the AV receiver automatically goes to that signal connection via the HDMI-ARC connection. And that is done with HDMI CEC. There is a way to set things up so that you do it manually. So in the Denon, if you go into the HDMI settings, which are under the display part of the settings menu, you can make it so that it is not an auto detect, that is not based on HDMI CEC, in order to activate the HDMI audio return channel. Excuse me. So you can turn off the automatic part of that. At that point, on your Denon's remote, there is one of like the input buttons. So, you have all your HDMI inputs, and they have different labels on the back of them. One of those buttons is just labeled TV sound, I think it is, or TV audio. Okay. And that is the button to manually activate the audio return channel port That's what that is. There's no input on the back of the AV receiver that goes to that TV audio button. That is the audio return channel button. But in order for that button to work, you have to have turned off the automatic signal sensing inside of that HDMI setting. So I think that's worth a try. Just try turning that off inside the settings of your Denon and then manually press that TV sound or TV audio. I'm forgetting exactly the way it's labeled, but it just looks like another input button, but it's called TV audio or TV sound, and try things that way.
As a workaround, could you connect an optical cable from the TV to the receiver? Can that function with 2 audio connections from the TV, both HDMI-ARC and optical? I don't know. I would think so.
Well, it can function, but you would end up having to toggle in the television whether you're using the ARC connection or the optical connection. There's no reason that you can't have both of those things plugged in from the TV to the AV receiver, because you can just give them different labels, right? You can say that the optical connection is whatever, CD, and then that's the one that you press when you're using that. So functionally it can work, but usually in the TV, you get to choose what is the output, and some TVs let you do... Well, some TVs let you do TV speaker and optical simultaneously, but not usually optical and HDMI simultaneously. So it means switching back and forth inside the TV setting, which is a bit of a hassle.
So is there a way to get the on-screen display of the volume changing not to show up? It breaks the immersion. On-screen display of the volume changing.
Yeah.
I don't. That's a TV side though, right? That's not.
It would be in this case, yeah. Which,
so if it's a TV side, there's nothing you can do.
No. Because if you plug all of your sources into the AV receiver, which obviously isn't something you can do with the built-in over-the-air antenna of the television, but like for your Apple TV, for example, you could plug that into the AV receiver instead of directly into the TV. So in the Denon, you can definitely turn off the on-screen display.
Yes.
That you actually turn off, they call video conversion. If you turn off video conversion, then you won't see a volume readout from the Denon. But if what you're seeing is the volume readout from the TV because you're using the audio return channel, then I'm not familiar enough with the Insignia TV to know if there's an ability to turn that off, but I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't. Very often on the TV display side of things, you don't have the option to turn that off, and I'm betting that's what it is because you're only talking about using the ARC connection. So I don't know of a way for sure to turn that off, but if there is, it would be inside of the TV settings, or if it's like the over-the-air antenna is the only thing that you're going to need to use ARC for, consider plugging the Apple TV into your AV receiver, and then you could do things that way. And you turn off video conversion in the Denon, and that'll make sure the video readout never shows up on your TV screen.
That's right. And that's the way I would hook it up anyways.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason to use ARC in this case. Jim appreciated the explanation that Rob went through in episode 854 with Lee about how to calculate how much amplifier wattage you actually need. I have a couple of articles on AV Gadgets about that too, in case you want to read it. One more thing he was wondering, Rob mentioned how you very well might need momentary peaks of several hundred watts to hit full 105 dB peak levels, but what if your speaker list specs something like 150 watts power handling with a peak of 300 watts damage that speaker? Instantaneous momentary peaks of 300 watts?
Transient, very fast, only lasts less than a second?
It will be fine.
Almost certainly.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. I mean, we can't say definitively
sure
for every single speaker and
possible to break a speaker.
Yes. Okay. It is sustained overpowering of a speaker, putting too much power into a speaker, having it play too loud for too long, that damages speakers.
Melt a voice coil or something like that. But I mean, so on some of the speaker brands, many of the ones that we favor, they'll actually list both either sustained or RMS, root mean square power, and then they'll list a separate peak power. So that's very nice. That tells you everything you need to know, very obviously. But of course, many speakers will show something like, 150 watts power handling. That's the only spec that you'll find. Or it'll be something like recommended amplifier power between 35 and 135 watts or something like that. Well, you take that number, the top of that recommended amplifier power spec or the 150 watts power handling spec, that is almost always the same as a sustained power rating, meaning it could take that much power all day long and you won't have too much of a problem. There is very few instances where the instantaneous, transient, shorter than a second peak power handling is not about double whatever that number is. So what you're talking about, 300 watts for a short little transient peak, almost always safe for a speaker that has something like 150 watts power handling or recommended amplifier power 50 to 150 watts. It's almost always okay. So yeah, we have to say almost, because of course there could be the weird speaker out there that does have some kind of problem, but that is usually a pretty safe bet. Now, if you're like, could I drive 1500 watts into the one that says 150 watts power handling without damaging something? I'd be a little bit iffy about that. It's usually about double whatever is there is fine.
Dale, and we'll include Cody in this one too, because apparently it kind of overlaps.
Similar.
So, Dale appreciated our discussion about which speakers he should get for his garage to go along with his classic Fisher audio stereo system. That threw me for a second. Rob was onto something when he mentioned the idea of mounting the speakers so they're up and out of the way, and also going for weatherproof speakers so that he wouldn't have to worry about dust or bugs getting in. He just wanted to clarify a couple of concerns. The Fisher audio system isn't super powerful. It's in the realm of 20 to 25 watts per channel. He'd like good sound with decent bass without spending too much on the speakers. Should he be looking for something with high sensitivity? He doesn't want to spend too much.
Yeah.
But
they're going in the garage.
He'd go in the garage.
He'd like to be able to mount them.
He wants something that's good, that's going to sound good with decent bass.
Yeah.
Physics are a thing, and so are there's only so much we're good at recommending things for people, but it's like I would like a $1 million car for $25. I would too, but I can't necessarily. And I saw somebody on Facebook that got one. Yeah, did you though? Or did they? Or is it just a big fat lie? So should you be looking at something with high sensitivity? No. You should be looking for something that you place very close to your face. So, if you generally work in one area of your garage, put the speakers near them.
Nearer
area.
To that side versus all the way across the garage on the other side.
And don't ever try to blast them. Listen, you can't have everything. You can't. And this is not me telling you. Like the universe. The universe is telling you this, so get, Well, there are Klipsch outdoor rated speakers that could do all of this stuff. Well, but are they cheap? Are they inexpensive?
Not particularly.
Well, there you go. So that's what he wants. He doesn't want to spend too much, right? So what's not too much? I don't know what that is. I'm
sticking with the ones that I recommended most highly to you, which was Dayton Audio's IO8 XT. They're $175 each, $350 a pair. You can get them from Parts Express.
Way too much. That's way too much.
Is it too much?
I think so. I don't know what he thinks not spending too much is, but I bet that's it.
So if that's the maximum price that you can go to, that's what I would recommend, because they're not inefficient. They're like 89 dB efficient, so that's completely really reasonable. They have nice bass output on them. They're completely sealed. They're very safe to have out in your garage. They are completely mountable. 8-inch driver in there, so a surprisingly good bass extension. So they would be my favorite choice. If that is too expensive, then again, I kind of stick Outdoor Speaker Depot's AP650s. They're $195 a pair. That's getting closer. If that's honestly still too expensive, then I don't really know what you want.
You kind of want used is what I think you want. Sure. The Yamaha speakers we used to recommend all the time, I think they're still around, right?
Some of them are, but they're not any cheaper than that.
No, they're not. But I think what the ones that we used to recommend are somewhere around $180, something like that, $150. Right.
But they weren't tremendously more efficient. They weren't tremendously less expensive. So,
and this is where I'm going here. Do not. You can't have everything, so you kind of have to choose what's most important to you. You also can't, no matter what you do, no matter what speakers we recommend, you can't be in your front yard talking to your neighbor on the curb and then playing your music
from inside the garage
and be able to hear it clearly with your 20 to 25 watts. I don't care how efficient your speakers are. This is not something that's going to happen.
Mention those Daytons, the IO8 XTs. They are out of stock at Parts Express right now, but there are more coming in next month, August. So it's not a tremendously long wait.
Yeah. So the Yamahas we used to recommend might be, I think, in the range of 180 to 250 a pair. Okay. So those will be a little bit cheaper. Again, they're not going to have everything that you want. Nothing's going to have everything you want. So, get over that part of it. But, and also start looking used, I think. And again, even with used, all you're saving is money. You won't be getting any the outdoor speakers that we're talking about, none of them are really meant to be super high fidelity. They're supposed to be not bad and pretty loud.
The Danes are pretty good.
Exactly. That's when you describe high fidelity, the end of it's like, yeah, they're pretty good. Pretty good is not the compliment that you're looking for.
No, that's pretty good coming from me. Like, they're pretty good.
All right. Yeah. No, that's not the way you said it the first time. So we asked, would a 3-way speaker sound better? Not necessarily.
Yeah, no particular reason it would.
I have this this particular I don't know what you call it, stick or something in my craw. What do they call that? Yeah. Anyways, when people get specific about the size of drivers, they get specific about the number of drivers, a 2-way, 2.5-way, 3-way speaker, which one is better and all that stuff. There is no better. There is no better. You can have a single driver speaker that is very good. It can happen. It's not very likely.
They'd be called headphones, but
well,
no, 2-way speakers could be. Hey, if it makes you feel better, those JBL M2 like mastering monitors that like everything, all the research is based on, and cost $20,000 for the pair. They're a 2-way speaker. They're not a 3-way speaker. They're a 2-way speaker.
Yeah. So, anyways, I just say, worrying about that is like worrying about the color of the car that you're buying when you're when you're on a budget and you need something that has good gas mileage and can fit a certain number of people, and you're like, oh, but it's red. Who cares? We made a couple of outdoor rated speaker suggestions for Dale previously, and for Cody, he's looking for a pair of speakers he can mount on the rear of his home for casual music playing while they're hanging out on the patio. Cody will be powering them with Zone 2 amplifiers with his Denon X1400H, and he only wants to spend about $200 max. There's no eave or awning where he intends to mount them, so they'll be totally exposed. Anything new to consider? Yeah, I think everything that we've already recommended would be fine, including the Yamahas that I just suggested not too long ago. The Yamahas that I suggested were mounted underneath an eave at my parents' house. To my knowledge, my parents have since sold that house. They are still there. I mounted them for them years ago, and they were working for the probably 6 years that were there. And this is North Carolina with snow and, heat and big temperature variations across different seasons, and they held up really well. So I mean, I think something like that. But any of the speakers that we recommended would be fine in this case.
For me, I think so. Nothing new for Dale. And for Cody, I think you should get one of the ones I mentioned, Outdoor Speaker Depot's AP650, $195 a pair. So they fit the budget that you were talking about. And they are a completely sealed design. And like I always say, for the tiny little gap where there has to be for the speaker wire to get into the binding posts, you can just put a little dab of silicone cold there. And now they are completely sealed up. No chance of anything, dust, bugs, weather, anything getting into those. So that's what I would suggest to you.
Yeah. Shawn asks, which speaker stands we recommend for under $150 a pair? He'd like something attractive and functional without breaking the bank. So you haven't been specific enough, honestly. We don't know.
I mean, he gave the price, which eliminates a lot of speaker stands out there.
It does, but it doesn't, we don't know if he's looking for a center channel, if he's looking for specific heights.
He said speaker stand, so I think he's talking about a pair.
I would think so, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't want speaker stands for all around his, are they for the back or for the front? Because that makes a big difference in how high they're going to be. So normally I would recommend Santa. Santa probably does not fit in this price bracket.
Yeah, they're a little over that price budget now. Yeah.
So generally speaking, I would go towards Monoprice. That would be the first place I personally would look. Yep. And their stands vary greatly in quality, but they won't fall down. I will say
they got the monolith ones, which are, almost all of them are $50 to $80 each. Depending on finish and size, height, and that. So they're all sort of in that range. So they're pretty close to the price range that you're looking at. You're going to be, between $100 and $200 depending on the finish and the size. So yeah, the monolith from Monoprice, absolutely something to consider. They got, metal version, black version, cherry finish version. So I mean, are they like the nicest looking piece of furniture ever? No, but they're available in different heights, and they're, I think, attractive enough looking. Like, they're not ugly. they're nice enough.
Another glowing recommendation for Rob.
That's right. No, but I mean, some are pretty ugly, and these are kind of nice. They have at least a little bit of a feature to them where they're not just completely plain and ugly looking, and nice and stable, reasonably affordable. So yeah, I like the Monolith for Monoprice. I'll also mention, like, if you just want to get kind of the lowest price that's still a decent stand, Dayton over at Parts Express. They have some pretty nice speaker stands, all kinds of different heights. Now, they are very plain. They are just black boxes, but what's nice about them, you can fill them with sand or kitty litter or lead shot or whatever you want to do. You fill them halfway up, make them very, very stable and inert. And yeah, all the different heights and very affordable prices. You know, several of them are under $100 for a pair. So if you don't find them unattractive, I don't think they're going to win any beauty contests, but they're not terrible. They're not ugly or anything like that. They're just nice, plain black stands. So Dayton from Parks Express is about as cheap as you can go. And they're good. Functionally, they're very nice.
Fred asked, could we recommend a USB microphone and an arm mount to attach it to his desk? He was using a headset for work calls, but it broke. He's been yelling into his webcam's microphone in the meantime, but he realized he'd just prefer a separate microphone rather than just getting another headset. Ideally, he'd be able to pull the microphone close and be able to speak quietly while still being heard clearly. It would minimize the sound of any typing. And the cherry on top would be if it had a mute button. Hopefully, he could get all of this for around $100, but that isn't a hard limit. He'd also like an arm mount that can attach to his desk with his monitor on it. What do we suggest? I have to go look at it because this is the microphone that I reviewed. Dark Matter.
Okay. Yes.
So
he even mentioned, he's like, didn't Tom suggest something?
I did. So the Dark Matter Sentry, I gotta figure out how much it is. It's $129 retail. Okay. So right now, and that comes with a desk stand, which is kind of crappy. It's USB. It has a mute button, which clicks, if I remember correctly, when you press it. But you can plug your if you want to use headphones, you can plug headphones directly into it right there. It has a volume control and something else, and it has lights that you can turn off if you don't want to use them. It also fits into any Blue Yeti, which is another microphone out there. Any stand that the Blue Yeti can use, this one can use because it has the same threaded bolt or whatever. You can find the review. I'll link the review up. But it is a good sounding microphone. I went in after I wrote my review. I went and found other reviews from people who apparently have never heard of sound waves before, and they were very irritated that because it comes in different. You can set it in different configurations as far as where the hot spot is for talking into it. If it's side to side or front to back or just the front. And they're like, well, it was supposed to be just sound. It was only supposed to record from the front, but I talked into the back of it and it still recorded. I'm like, oh my God, my dude, what did you think was going to happen? It's still sounds still in magic. The air. So. Overall, I was very impressed with the sound of this, and you can hear my voice compared to the Audio Technica, which I think is going to be similar to what Rob is going to recommend here.
I mean, I'm suggesting an Audio Technica, but a different style. So I'm suggesting a dynamic microphone, like what you would consider a stage microphone, right? You ever seen a singer holding it on stage? That's the type of microphone that I use. So the exact one that I have, that's been discontinued. So now it is the Audio Technica ATR 2100X. That's the current model. This is USB and it has an XLR connection as well, but you would just use USB. That's fine. It's $80, so it's not breaking the bank. One thing I actually like better about the 2100 than the one that I have is it's not a mute button, but it's just like an on-off button, like you've seen any singer, right? Just a little slider button. But the new one on the 2100 is quieter, so you can actually turn that off without the person on the other end or you're recording noticing that you've slid it off.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt for just a second because I misread my own review. The Yeti is a 130 retail, usually on sale for about $100. This thing is 99. I think it's No, it's $100 retail. It was when I reviewed it. It was $69.99, so $70. Okay. It is currently $49.99.
Oh wow! That's so it's Dark Matter Sentry.
It's microphone. $50 over at.
Okay, very inexpensive.
over at Monoprice. You can find the link on the review. So
okay.
Read the review. Go on. Sorry, Rob. Go.
No problem at all. So yeah, the ATR 2100X from Audio-Technica is so this is one you speak right down the barrel of the mic, and it's pretty darn good at not picking up sounds. I mean, of course, if someone's yelling from behind the mic, you're still going to hear that someone was yelling, but not anywhere near as loud as if they yelled into the front of the microphone. It is a tremendously large difference. So just a regular stage microphone like that. I like the new button on it. I would absolutely recommend, you can get it at Amazon in a package that comes with a shock mount that is the right size for it, and a windscreen, just a little thing to stop the pops, the S and P sounds that come out of there. That's only $16 to add on the shock mount for it, so you're still under $100 for the microphone and the shock mount. And then, again, in the package that Amazon sells, there's just, clamp onto your desk, movable, spring-loaded arm that is the right sort of size for that. That is another $16. So you put all of those together, you've gone a little over $100, but he was saying he's expecting the mount to cost more than the $100 microphone. So you're pretty close to the $100 mark for everything that you wanted. I'll have all the links for that. You can just pick it up at Amazon. Easy.
Yay. Nick, about a year ago, Nick bought an inexpensive 43-inch TCL 4 Series TV for the bedroom. It's been totally fine as far as picture quality goes. His wife uses it more than he does, and she likes the Roku interface. But recently, about half the time when they turn it on, the right half of the screen is static. It is literally split right down the middle, with the left side looking normal and the right side all static lines. We have a picture to see over at AVRant.com. Sorry. Okay. Cycling the power can get it working again, but it's obviously annoying to have to keep turning the power on and off until the image looks normal. Very hit or miss. He's checked the firmware and made sure it's up to date. Anything else we can suggest to try if fixing it is not super cheap and easy? Should he shy away from getting another TCL or to replace it, or would stepping up to a higher end model make it less likely to run into a problem like this? My dude, you just got unlucky. This is not. Yeah,
this is weird.
This is not. There's something that. My belief is that there is a loose connection or a faulty board. Something in the board is faulty.
It's kind of weird. That's right down the middle.
It is smack down the middle. Yes.
It's exactly half the screen.
Yeah. So fixing this. If you're asking the question, the answer is too hard for you to do. And it's too hard for me to do, and I'm pretty sure it's too hard for Rob to do. So, Leah, don't feel bad. We're all in the same boat here.
And if you are out of warranty, it's given how inexpensive the TCL 4 Series TVs are, you're probably not saving much money to just get a whole new one. So, I mean, it's not like honestly, it's not like TCL has some horrible track record where everyone is saying that their TVs fail super fast. I mean, Vizio had that back when they first came out, and it has still haunted them to this day, even though it isn't really deserved anymore. But TCL's never had that. So I mean, look, unfortunately, you got a bit of a lemon on this one. That's as far as I can tell. There's certainly not like a setting that you messed up that created that error. I wouldn't feel bad about. I mean, if she already likes the Roku interface, and I don't know, is anybody else doing Roku? There's certainly Amazon is all over the place now. Amazon TVs that you can get directly from Amazon, of course, and then other ones have the Amazon interface built in. So, but I wouldn't feel bad about getting another TCL.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Yes. Okay. So this is my thing. Honestly, I would buy a Roku.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And the reason is I think it first of all, they're not that expensive. Number one, they're not that expensive.
Roku sticks certainly aren't.
Yeah, and you can then be guaranteed if there's ever a TV change, or more likely, like you go on vacation, you get an Airbnb somewhere, something like that. You just take the stick with you. You take the Roku box with you. You plug it into your new place, to the place you're staying, and boom, you've got. And your wife never has to learn another remote. She never has to deal with a weird interface. She knows what it is. And all that TV has to do is play that one input constantly. Yeah. So that's outside of the buying of the TV. What it does is free you up to buy whatever TV you want, and you're not limited.
But even so, if you're getting another 43-inch inexpensive TV for the bedroom, like, I'm probably getting the TCL.
Yeah. And like some people get really super weirdly gun shy if they have if they have a device that they bought from a manufacturer and it's defective or has problems. I guess I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people and they're like, "Oh, I don't buy Sonys anymore." Why? I got the Sony DVD player and it was weird and now I don't trust Sony. Well, you're going to go through a lot of manufacturers that way. You know,
True.
you should be fine. You know, you just got on low.
This is a bad luck. I never like to see it, but yeah.
I'm starting to think your wife throws things at the TV. That's my guess.
I don't know if it'd be perfectly down the middle like that. Yeah.
Well, maybe she's got good shot. Will says he has written us several times over the years, and we've never steered him wrong. He's loved the BenQ projectors, Fosse amp, Marantz receiver, and Panasonic UB420 that he bought on our advice. So when Tom said to pay a little extra to get the LG B2 over the A2 so that he didn't have to worry about the A2 60Hz limits, he waited one extra month and found the 77-inch B2 on sale for under $2,000, so he snapped it up. Now,
we've never steered him wrong. There's always a first time, Tom.
Yeah. First up, he turned off the power saving feature and put the B2 OLED into its cinema picture mode. Any other settings he should change right away? And should deep color be on or off? There is a website for you. I don't know where it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Artings, Ratings, they broke down the B2 settings, and their B2 settings are absolutely fine in my view. So if you just follow right along with what they suggested, you'll be in good stead. There's also nothing wrong with leaving it in the cinema picture mode. It's close enough, so you don't have to be like, oh no, they suggested the ISF expert dark mode and not cinema. No, they're close enough. They're all pretty similar, those ones. But yeah, if you follow along with rating settings, you'll have absolutely great picture settings for out of the box on your B2. For the deep color, that basically all depends on, are you watching 4K HDR source? Because anything that's a 4K HDR source, so like your Panasonic UB420 player, an Apple TV 4K, anything along those lines, it will almost always like automatically prompt you for whatever input you plug that into to turn the HDR deep color, the HDMI deep color on for that input. You do want to turn that on. So it's only for things that don't do 4K HDR, an old Blu-ray player, a cable TV box that only goes up to 1080p or something like that. Those you don't have to. There usually isn't any problem turning it on, even if it isn't a 4K HDR source. The one thing that will almost always cause a problem is a 3D Blu-ray player. That is the one that you almost always have to have that turned off. But other than that, it's pretty safe to usually have it on anyway, but it usually prompts you. But it's for 4K HDR.
Okay. He's got the B2's ARC port connected to his TCL Alto 8i soundbar, which is compatible with Atmos. He used to have a TCL TV as well.
Mm-hmm.
There didn't used to be any issues when he had his Apple TV 4K plugged into his TCL TV and then fed the TCL soundbar via HDMI-ARC. But now with the B2 OLED, if he sets the Apple TV 4K to output best audio, he gets intermittent audio dropouts whenever he's playing Atmos content. It's ARC. Okay. Furthermore, the little display on the front of the TCL soundbar keeps scrolling Dolby Atmos over and over, which he used to only do once while he was using his TCL TV, and then the display on the soundbar would shut off. And the only workaround he has found so far is locking the Apple TV 4K to Dolby Digital 5.1 output only. Frankly, it's not as though the TCL soundbar had any great overhead Atmos effects anyways, but it still ought to be able to work, right? This sounds like a renegotiation, continuous renegotiation of the HDMI handshake. Somewhere. Yeah. That's what it sounds like to me. And I know you've got a lot to say, but
not a lot.
Let me just say that this is the big... as much as I hate HDMI CEC and eARC and ARC and all this other stuff, the real problem is not... Well, it is HDMI, but the real problem is that there's no structure or standards in place to force manufacturers to make sure that their devices work the same way through this negotiation. So they test their own stuff, and then that's it. And then there's no external body to go, okay, well, this doesn't work with this TV, so you need to fix it. Or this doesn't work with this soundbar, so you need to fix it. And nobody does that. So yes, it didn't happen before because you had two TCL products that were basically connecting with each other. And now you've got something else, and it's not your fault. It's definitely not my fault, but it is HDMI's fault, 100%.
Sure. So, the thing is, we actually know that, as far as a Dolby Atmos signal coming out of the Apple TV 4K, going into the TV, because it can't go directly through the TCL soundbar because it can't pass through 4K and HDR. So he's connected it the right way, plugged the Apple TV 4K directly into his new B2 OLED, then using the B2 OLED's ARC port to feed the audio to the TCL soundbar. And the TCL soundbar is indicating that it's getting a Dolby Atmos signal when he's playing Dolby Atmos content from his Apple TV 4K. So it's not as though none of this functions whatsoever. He's like, yeah, it goes into that mode. For some reason, it keeps scrolling. Like Tom said, it's probably getting a handshake over and over again. And then it's intermittently cutting out on the audio, which of course is very annoying. I'm wondering if this is as simple as you didn't upgrade your HDMI cables, because I don't think your old TCL was like the same full bandwidth that your brand new B2 OLED is. It wasn't doing 4K 120, most likely your old TCL. I'm like, this might be a case where an HDMI cable upgrade actually solves this issue, because it's like the signal is getting there, but it's dropping out, which means you're like right on the borderline of having enough bandwidth. And I'm actually thinking the HDMI, I mean, both HDMI cables, the one from the Apple TV 4K to the television and the one from the television to the soundbar, because it's so cheap and easy to upgrade your HDMI cables. And in your case, you only need to do premium high speed. You don't have to do ultra high speed. Premium high speed would be enough.
Might as well.
You might as well. You might as well at this point. So yeah, the Monoprice, Zest Kit, those are Rui Pro, any of those are fully certified for ultra high speed if you want that. And I would think that's worth a shot in this case, because I can guarantee you the B2 OLED is absolutely capable of outputting the Dolby Atmos signal from an Apple TV 4K to a soundbar. So unless it's just a glitch with the soundbar itself, which is not out of the realm of possibility, but if it isn't that, I'm thinking this might just be an HDMI cable.
Oh, I like that. That's better than just me being mad at it.
Right.
Where are we? I lost my
C.
C. When he had his TCL TV, the volume indicator would show up on screen when using his soundbar. Now that indicator is gone when using his B2 OLED, and he'd like to have it back. Any way to fix it?
The reverse of the other fellow who was like, I want to get rid of the volume. No, he wants it back, and it went away.
So which one's controlling the volume?
Right.
Where is the volume being controlled from, I guess is the question. I forgot how this thing... It's been so long since we started this question.
Well, so you got Apple TV 4K, going into the TV via ARC going into the soundbar. Yeah. So there are three different things that could be potentially controlling the volume. Right. Because you could be using the Apple TV 4K's remote, which should be sending a signal via HDMI CEC through the television into the soundbar and turning up the soundbar's volume. You could be using the TV's remote, which would be sending a signal through HDMI CEC and HDMI-ARC into the soundbar. Or you could be using the TCL soundbar's remote and just turning the volume up and down directly on the soundbar itself. All three of those things are possible and functional. Now, would any of them necessarily make a volume display show up on your screen when it's a TCL soundbar no longer connected to a TCL TV, and who knows, maybe they had one little bit of metadata going back and forth between their brands of items? That might just be the thing. It might used to be that you were used to picking up the TCL soundbar's remote, controlling the volume directly, and it would put a little display on your TCL TV.
That's what that other guy should do. He just buys a TCL soundbar and fixes this whole problem.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's what I would say. Try using the LG TV's remote, the remote that came with the LG TV. If that doesn't do it when you're changing the volume with that remote, then I don't think there's a way to do it. And you'll just have to go by whatever readout the soundbar itself has.
It's, again, the whole big problem with HDMI CEC is that it's meant to be easy, but at the same time, it's so very complex that no one's really thought of all the permutations of how people want something done. So therefore, where would you even put all these menus?
And the manufacturers all wanted to separate themselves and make it into an incentive to only buy the same brand of things, which was not the idea whatsoever, but that's what they wanted it to be.
So next, he's noticed that if he uses his Apple TV 4K to play YouTube videos, there are momentary black screens whenever it switches from the video to an ad and back again. So he's tried using the LG OLED's built-in YouTube app, which has had shorter black screens, but still annoying that the playback isn't smooth. Any way to fix that? Force the Apple TV 4K to output one resolution.
One frame rate. Yeah. On the Apple TV 4K, if you turn off match frame rate and you manually select a given resolution and frame rate and you just leave it there and never let it change. So you turn off any of the match settings, no match frame rate, no match dynamic range, which means let's say you choose 4K 60 as the resolution and frame rate, and let's say you choose Dolby Vision as the output. That means everything is coming out in that container. Now, honestly, the Apple TV 4K does a completely reasonable job of taking any signal and putting it into that container and leaving it that way, and it does a perfectly reasonable job of doing that conversion for you. It's not a terrible way to use your Apple TV. It's really not the end of the world. For persnickety people like me, I like to have the match frame rate and all of that, but it's not honestly necessary to still have a good experience. So interestingly enough, that would be the best way for you to go about things here. If what bugs you the most are those interstitial black screens whenever your content changes, just locking your Apple TV 4K to always output one resolution, one frame rate, and one HDR format, it works perfectly fine.
One major annoyance is that whenever he powers up the B2 OLED, he'd like it to always go to HDMI input 1, which has his cable box plugged into it. HDMI 2 is his Apple TV. He turned off HDMI CC in his Apple TV, but he can't turn LG's Simp Link, which is the name for HDMI CC, off in the TV, or else the HDMI-ARC won't work with the soundbar at all.
That's
Half the time when he powers up the TV, the Apple TV turns on 2, and then the TV goes to HDMI 2. He set the HDMI 1 as the default input, but that doesn't seem to be enough. Anyway, to fix this annoyance, I mean, you could literally take somebody hostage over at HDMI.
I mean, I think what's happening here is anytime the last device you were using was the Apple TV, that's what it goes to when it turns back on.
Yeah.
And yes, unfortunately, you try to, the only thing you can do, you turn HDMI CC off in the Apple TV, but you can't turn it off in the TV, otherwise your soundbar won't work. That is absolutely the case. So
it was just like Rob said earlier. It's like, even though you've turned it off,
yes, that
does not mean
really
that it's not really off. It's more like, you were joking.
Yeah, indeed.
Any signal that it gets is going to be like, oh, you wanted me to be on. You see? I see now.
I mean, about the only way that I can suggest to you is whenever you want to turn your TV on, you don't pick up the Apple TV remote. You don't pick up the LG remote. The only remote you pick up when you turn on the TV is your cable box remote. And that is the only thing that you ever use to turn on the TV. And then it will go to HDMI 1 because that's what your cable box is plugged into.
I bet that doesn't even work.
Even that, I can't guarantee would work. I mean, the other thing would be like, always make sure that when the last thing you're using was your Apple TV, before you turn the TV off, you switch it over to the cable box. And then when you turn it back on, it should.
Let me ask you a question, my friend.
But
how much money is it worth to not be frustrated with this whole ridiculousness?
Yeah.
How much money is it worth it to
you? Because Minnesota Baton could fix this.
Well, there's that. But it doesn't really fix everything, does it? Because he's still got the volume control issue and everything else, right? So the real solution is to not use HDMI CEC at all at any point in this.
But then how does he get the sound to the soundbar?
Well, he uses an AV receiver. Full stop.
Could do that.
And then that's the end of that. Then you just send the audio out. I mean, even if you send it out from the TV, you could send it out via optical. Let's be honest. Atmos isn't doing anything for you in this situation.
Does he get an LG soundbar? Is that going to be the solution?
I mean, maybe, but guarantee you're not going to be without problems. The only way to really get rid of all this is to just get away from, and that's the
CC completely.
That's the unfortunate answer to these problems, and people.
It is very unfortunate. Yes,
that they've been sold a bill of goods that says HDMI will do these things. And it's like, HDMI's like, I'm totally doing it. And you're like, you're not doing it. I mean, you're kind of doing it, but you're also doing it wrong.
As soon as you get more than one source, CEC always becomes a problem. It's okay with one source. That's it.
Okay. I just read an article yesterday, and I'm not going to publish it for a while because I want to sit on it for a bit. But the whole premise of this article is, not the whole, but part of the main argument is HDMI is absolutely killing home theater for many people, and it's not because HDMI is actively doing anything terrible. What it is that any level of frustration people experience, because they're going from a TV to a soundbar. Now your next step should be your gateway drug into home theater. right? This should be your next. You should go, oh, this is so good, I want to do more. It's not. You get the soundbar, and then you experience HDMI CEC and HDMI ARC and all this other stuff, and it's a unending frustrations. That the answer is, well, you have to buy more stuff,
right?
And nobody wanted to buy more stuff to begin with. You want them to want to buy more stuff, and how do you do that? You have the first step be the good step. And HDMI is absolutely killing that for everybody. And I'm so irritated right now because my wife looked at me at dinner the other night and she goes, "Is home theater dead?" Yeah. I'm like, I hope not. I've got a podcast and a website that's built around the entire idea of it. She's like, well, I saw an article that was home theater is dead, and I wonder if that's true. I'm like, and then I started thinking about it. I'm like, it might be dying. It might be. And HDMI...
I don't feel that way.
Well, I don't. I'm trying not to. But if it does, HDMI will be the one that either fired the bullet, was the bullet, or held the person, still so the bullet can enter their body. Because that's how important it is that we not have these problems. Harmony, honestly, had a lot of this stuff solved for a lot of people.
Yup.
And Harmony is now dead, I think, because of HDMI CEC.
Oh, that was they saw as the writing on the wall, for sure.
The promise of HDMI CEC was like, you won't need the Harmony anymore. You won't need these universal remotes. You won't need any of this. So what do we have? We've got HDMI CEC, and everybody's like, well, this doesn't work. No. But I mean, it kind of works, but it doesn't do what I want it to do in a way that I expect it to do. Well, even then, I can't make the volume show up. I can't get I can't get this to work. I can't get that to work. It doesn't work exactly the way I want it to. Harmony had all that figured out.
So do we say, I mean, if he wants all the things, including the volume display and everything, do we say, get an LG soundbar, or, trade in that B2 for a TCL QM8, which is as close as TCL gets with any of their TVs to OLED performance. It's not as good.
I don't think there's any guarantee that the LG soundbar is going to solve all your problems, honestly. And I don't even think that... my friend, I'm going to be dead honest with you. I don't think getting another TCL is going to put you back to where you were either.
Not necessarily, yeah.
Because there's no guarantee that volume readout is going to show back up on your TV. Because
it's more likely that way. If you're keeping the TCL soundbar. What if he ever upgrades? What if he goes to a different brand of soundbar, Tom?
What if they just do a firmware update and break it, and everybody's like, no one really used it anyways? The real solution is to buy more stuff, which nobody wants to do. And I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you.
If he does get a Sofa Baton X1, it could fix some of these things, the input thing, but also open up a whole new slew of problems. More questions might be coming in if he does get that.
And I'm sorry, I don't think we steered you wrong in getting you the best picture quality.
It's still a darn good TV. It's a beautiful TV.
I mean, I think the question was, which TV should I get? And it wasn't like to work with my stupid soundbar. It was, which TV should I get?
Have you actually tried the B2's built-in speakers? Because with its Atmos mode, which it has, because I'm like, I think it's a million miles away from what that TCL soundbar is putting out by itself. Because they're not that bad.
I hate all these solutions. I hate every single one of them. I hate myself for being part of this conversation. I think this is terrible. I think we're doing a terrible job, Rob, and it's because of HDMI.
True. We're hamstrung.
Lastly, he asks, he doesn't have a disc player for his OLED yet. Oh, that'll make things easier and better.
A third source.
You thought two sources were fun. Let me introduce you to three. I'm sweating in here. It's hot. He's got his Panasonic UB420 on hand that can't do Dolby Vision, but would he really be missing anything? He's finding it difficult to justify buying the considerably more expensive UB828 strictly to get Dolby Vision. So if he used his UB8420, would it actually look way worse? And what setting would he use for his HDMI HDR optimizer? My God, this is can you imagine the amount of questions he's gonna have after he hooks this thing up, and who knows what it's going to do and everything else to this whole system.
I would be very okay using a 420 with any LG OLED.
There's no world in which I'm going to recommend you buy another device for this system.
all of my Plex backups, all the movies that I play from my Plex backup, Even the ones that were, came on discs with Dolby Vision. I don't have the Dolby Vision version in my Plex backups. I just use the HDR10. And so, okay, you had two of them side by side. Is it possible to see potential differences between the HDR10 version and the Dolby Vision version? You can sometimes spot little differences if you had two identical setups side by side. I can't promise you that the HDR10 version is literally identical, but it looks great. The B2 does a very good job of tone mapping. In the UB420, under the HDR optimizer, one of the settings options is OLED. And that is the correct setting. It works very nicely with an OLED TV when you set the HDR optimizer to OLED. I would 100% do that. I would not worry about getting a UB820 just to get Dolby Vision. Not at all. Go with the less expensive player and you will be absolutely fine. That's it.
He's already got it on hand too. So
that's right.
It. All right, who we got left?
On the list, we have Daz, Steve, Alan, and Brian. I think that's everybody. Yep, that's everybody. You guys will be first up next week.
All right. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Ari and Brandon for going to avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and sending us a PayPal donation, as well as our 133 patrons over at patreon.com.
That is right, Ari and Brandon. Thank you for your PayPal donations, and patreon.com/AVRant podcast is where you can go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation if you'd like to. Big thanks to our 133 patrons over there.
So I want to thank Brandon for giving me permission to use photos on avgadgets.com.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon.
And for the notes of gratitudes from Ryan, Ari, Jim, Paul, Dale, Shawn, Fred, Will, Steve, and Brandon. Thank you for thanking us.
That is right. I'll say the names one more time. Ryan, Ari, Jim, Paul, Dale, Shawn, Fred, Will, Steve, and Brandon. Thank you all very much for your notes of gratitude to us. We appreciate your notes of encouragement for sure. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
For AVRant, if you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.